اوكي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا مولانا محمد عليه وعلى آله أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all of you and to give you the best in dunya and akhirah ya Rabb. Ameen, ameen, ameen. As you know, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, we have finished Surat al Araf last class. And the purpose of this class, as we discussed in the last session, the purpose of this class, inshallah ta'ala, is to be able to summarize everything that we have looked at before and review and inshallah engage with you to make sure inshallah that you have benefited bi'idhnillah ta'ala as much as possible. So can I inshallah get someone who's here to tell me some of the main lessons that you've taken, some of the main points that you've taken from Surat al Araf thus far? While you think about that question, inshallah, I'll open up with a recitation. And inshallah, right after that, I would like to hear from some of you, what are some of the main lessons you've taken from the surah thus far? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم صاد. كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك حرج منه لتنذر به وذكرى للمؤمنين. اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء قليلا ما تذكرون. وكم من قرية أهلكناها فجاءها بأسنا بياتا أو هم قائلون. فما كان دعواهم إذ جاءهم بأسنا إلا أن قالوا إنا كنا ظالمين. فلنسألن الذين أرسل إليهم ولنسألن المرسلين فلنقصن عليهم بعلم وما كنا غائبين. والوزن يومئذ الحق فمن ثقلت موازينه فأولئك هم المفلحون. ومن خفت موازينه فأولئك الذين خسروا أنفسهم بما كانوا بآياتنا يظلمون. ولقد مكناكم في الأرض وجعلنا لكم فيها معايش قليلا ما تشكرون. ولقد خلقناكم ثم صورناكم ثم قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس لم يكن من الساجدين. طيب، بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. So as we mentioned earlier, we alhamdulillah finished last class Surat al Araf from beginning to end by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now we're just going to tie everything together bi'idhnillah ta'ala. But before we do that, I want to make sure inshallah this class is as interactive as possible and as engaging as possible. I'd like to hear from all of you inshallah. Who can tell me from this main section, so ayah 1 all the way to ayah 11, what do we take from that section? Let me share the screen here, so perhaps inshallah we can get more interaction. So when we look at these ayahs, from the very beginning of Surat al Araf, Alif Lam Mim Sad, كتاب أنزل إليك فلا يكن في صدرك حرج منه لتنذر به ذكرى للمؤمنين, all the way to ayah 11. What do we gather? Who remembers from this section of the surah? What do we take?
We learn about Allah's power.
We learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power. So who's speaking?
Shu'aib.
MashaAllah, Shu'aib. Tell me more. What do we learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power? How do we? Tell me more.
We learn that what he's able to do with the communities, the communities before him, that the prophets were sent to, and then when they disobeyed what he had done to them.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So we learn about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always in charge. He's very powerful. And this is going to be connected to everything that comes later, because we're going to look at what happened with Fir'aun. We're going to look at what happened with the people that didn't believe in Nuh alayhi salam. We're going to look at what happened with the people that didn't believe in Lut alayhi salam. And we're going to look at, subhanAllah, the various types of crimes they've committed. Some of them committed social crimes. Some of them committed economic crimes. Some of them committed behavioral crimes or ethical crimes. And some of them committed, indecent, physical, sexual activity. So we look at all kinds of crimes that they've committed and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always aware and always powerful. Excellent. What else do we learn from this section? Who can tell me what else?
Assalamu Sheikh.
Alaikum salam. Abdullah, yes.
Just glancing through the ayats, you can kind of see how Allah has always given us so many opportunities and he's always in completely just. I mean, even just from the second ayah, it says a book sent down to you, which kind of shows us that even sending down revelation to us is a favor in the first place. And even other ayats, ayah number 5, even the people, they admit that they were completely in the wrong. We have indeed been wrongdoers. Even the next ayah after that, Allah is showing that even the messengers themselves will be questioned and, giving a full account. And ayah number 8 really sticks out in terms of the weighing on that day will be just. And for those whose scales will be heavy, they will be successful. So it's kind of showing us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given people plenty of opportunities. He's delivered the message very clearly. And, if they choose to turn away, that's, completely their own fault. Allah's been more than lenient in terms of the opportunities that he's given to us.
Excellent, excellent. Very good reflection, mashallah, tabarakallah. What about the third ayah? What do we take from this section? And I want you to start connecting this to the context of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself and the community in Medina. What does this ayah? Ayah 3 tell us? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the community in Medina. Anyone? Bismillah.
He's telling us not to worship anyone but him.
Okay. اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء قليلا ما تذكرون. That is correct. So not just don't worship anyone besides him, but in the way that we do that worship, because sometimes it's not about bowing down to the idol. That's not the only way that you can worship something, right? It's about being committed to the idea, putting it in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or putting it in a place in your heart where it's more important than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء. This is a reminder for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for the community and for the Sahaba around the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for the entire community of Muslims and people of other yet to be Muslim in Mecca to basically commit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, follow what has come to you from your Lord and don't follow anything besides it, which means you can actually follow Allah but still follow something else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the surah, we hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, very few of them believe without committing shirk. That means many people will believe, but they will still hold on to remnants of disbelief or polytheism or shirk, association of Allah, of something else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excellent. What do we take from this ayah? Ayah 8. Ayah 8. Bismillah. I know some of you here. So let's hear from you, inshallah. Sister Maryam, are you here? Maryam Wasti and Sister Maram. Miguel?
We could say that the like the mawazin in this dunya are not the same as on the day of judgment. Like the things we find, the people we find powerful today aren't the same on the day of judgment.
Very good. Besides people, what else?
Actual scales themselves, how we look and define. Like Allah is just, and His scales are not like us, and how we define or give dunya weight is not the way God does it. Allah does it in a very just way and a very personalized, individualized way to be fair for everyone.
Excellent, excellent. So al-wazn yawma'idhin al-haqq, it's a reminder from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the scales, the way that we value things, the way that we value ideas, the way that we value objects, the way that we value people, in this dunya is going to be very biased. It's going to be very, it's not going to be rooted in something objective. Very, very few cases will you find, or very few circumstances will you find that objective valuation or evaluation of ideas. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the true value of everything will come out on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so this is a reminder for everyone in Mecca that, and everyone in Medina, and everyone, Muslims in general, but the original context, it's a reminder for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for those who are passing away, those who are, you know, dying for the sake of their religion, for those who are being persecuted, that the true justice will be set on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Excellent, excellent. طيب. Let's look at the story of Iblis, the story of Iblis. What do we take from the story of Iblis? Some of the main lessons that we take from the story of Iblis, and how that is connected to the general theme of the surah. What do we take from the story of Iblis?
I think it's very related to the last ayah that you just mentioned in terms of, you know, what people value is not always objective. And Iblis saying here that, you know, he doesn't want to prostrate to Adam just because he's made of clay. What gives value to clay and what gives value to fire, right? I mean, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who decides the value of anything, and Iblis is here committing the first sin, and it's not based on objectivity, it's just pure arrogance, basically.
Excellent, excellent. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. That's a good point. So here, Iblis's sin is not just one of pride, refusing to bow down because of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's actually one of false analogy. He made a false analogy, assuming the fire is better than clay. Fire is better than clay. And this shows you, subhanAllah, what happens when you make decisions based on just the rationale or rationality. When you use logic to make a decision, it may seem in your mind, you can rationalize it, you can justify it. But in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the scales of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no such justification. That justification is actually a false one. Excellent. And what do we learn about the issue of arrogance from the very beginning? And how is that related to every prophet that is sent? The word here, فَهْبِطْ مِنْهَا, go down because of your arrogance. فَخْرُجْ, get out. What does that tell you about Jannah? And what does that tell you about those who are going to be receiving guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and admitted into Jannah? What's one quality that they're going to have? Who would like to answer that question? Let's see. Sister Maram, are you there? What about Sunny? Sunny, do you want to give us an answer? Sister Shahid, are you there? I know some of you, because this is the first time that we're doing it, some of you are setting up the audio. So inshallah, let's see if we can get some of you to participate, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, so one quality could be that they're humble, so they'd be entering this is a community. And then the description about how it hints at that Jannah is higher than like morally higher, and so there's a clear distinction between our behavior as humans and our behavior as people in Jannah.
Excellent. So those who are going to receive guidance, we see clearly that they're going to be from those who are humble. They're not going to be arrogant. They're not going to be arrogant. And that's what happens with people in the surah that receive guidance and accept. They're humble. And those who don't receive those who receive guidance but don't listen, usually it's because of arrogance. They feel like, I'm so big that Allah has to send something bigger for me. I need something bigger. I need a bigger sign. I need a bigger manifestation of power. I need Allah to speak directly to me, or something like that. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Excellent. So inshallah, let's do the exercise that we're here for, inshallah ta'ala. Let's start from the very beginning, and we'll go, inshallah, throughout the story again, or throughout the surah again, just to tie everything together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the surah with alif, lam, mim, sad. And we said that the disjointed letters, they have many, many purposes. One of the purposes is to humble the individual. Here are the basic components of the language. Are you able to come up with something like the Quran? So it's there to the original audience of the Quran. It's there to every other audience of the Quran, that these are the basic letters of language. These are the basic letters of the Arabic language. Come up with something like it. So this is part of the Quranic challenge. So the surah itself begins with a very clear challenge as we understand it. Here are the basic letters. Come up with something like the Quran. But of course, we know that they're not able to come up with something like the Quran. So instead, they choose to do what? They choose to put social pressure, political pressure, even engage with physical confrontation against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we start here with I would say that the surah begins with a very clear challenge. And if you don't read it as a challenge, you can look at it as a humbling invitation. Humble yourself, because this is language. It's made up of letters, A-L-M, Mim, Sad. But at the end of the day, how do you know that it makes those sounds? How do you know that it makes those sounds? And how do you know how to arrange letters? And how do you know how to speak? And how do you know how to communicate? All of those things are opportunities to be grateful. So the beginning of the surah invites people to be humble intellectually, to appreciate the gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, and to be a bit more reflective about their own limitations. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a reminder to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a mandate. This is a mandate. It's given to you. O Muhammad, is given to you. So don't have any bit of unease about it. Don't have any unease. And you see, this is an advice that is implemented throughout the surah by who? It's an advice that is implemented throughout the surah by all of the prophets and messengers. So I want you to connect this ayah, كِتَابٌ أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٌ مِّنْهُ, to the way that Nuh deals with his people, to the way that Musa deals with his people. Musa doesn't have any shame in going up to Fir'aun and speaking. He doesn't shy away. He doesn't, hold or keep any information away. He's very explicit and he's very direct. And then here we mention, this is a reminder that even when you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to be careful to make sure that you're always filtering that belief and removing any other association, that it's purely for the sake of Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that special place in your heart that no one else has. And then we're given a warning in ayah 4 about those who came before, different tribes, different communities that did not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what happened to them? They were brought to destruction. Why were they brought to destruction? Well, because they were themselves, as they testified, they were from the wrongdoers. So there's a connection between being absent in terms of being distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being a wrongdoer, being someone who commits injustice. When you don't give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala his right, how are you going to give anyone else the right? When you don't acknowledge the one that made you, how are you going to fully acknowledge everything else around you and give everything else the right that it deserves around you? So the Quran makes it clear that they themselves, when they were destroyed, they testified against themselves that we were indeed from the wrongdoers. We were indeed unjust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reminds them that everyone will be asked. So what about this injustice? Is this injustice going to go unanswered? No. Why is it not going to go unanswered? Because on Yawm al-Qiyamah, everyone will be asked. Everyone will be asked. Even the messengers, they will be asked as well. So this is a reminder that everyone will be asked. فَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الَّذِينَ أُرْسِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. You and me, we're going to be asked, did you receive the revelation? Did you understand it? Was it delivered clearly to you? Did it make sense? Were there any issues in receiving it? And so it shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take all of those things into account, and is going to ask also the messengers. And remember, we are messengers of the messenger. So we will be asked, did you do your job in transmitting the message, in explaining it clearly, in speaking the language and the dialect, and not just the verbal language, but the body language, the emotional language of the people. So now that we've seen this, this section that's talking about judgment and people before that were destroyed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us here we are going to tell you stories of those who were destroyed before you. So you may be reading this ayah and you're saying, ayah 5, and you're saying, well, who was destroyed before and why? What is injustice? What do you mean they were wrong? They were doing wrong. Give me an example of the wrong that they're doing. So all of those questions are going to be answered where? They're going to be answered through the stories. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to tell you, don't do this, don't do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you examples in the surah of things that were done wrongly and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished those things that were done wrong. And why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to tell us these stories? Because He was not absent. When we tell stories, we're going to take a side, we're going to spice things up, we're going to have an emotional bias, and an inclination or a limitation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He tells the story is not going to be limited. The story is going to be true. The story is not going to be biased. Tamam? And that's what, remember, وَمَا كُنَّا غَائِبِينَ, we were never absent. That is connected to the weighing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was never absent. So when He gives a weight to anything, it is the true weight, not a biased, limited perception of that weight. So then what happens to those who have on that day good scales coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Let me just fix this here. I think we lost. Can everyone still see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the ones who are successful are the ones that are going to have their weight heavy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the ones that are going to be unsuccessful, the ones that are going to lose, who are they? They're the ones who are going to come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with low grades. So imagine every aspect of your life, you are being graded, you're being weighed. Your patience is being weighed, it's being evaluated. Your kindness is being evaluated. In moments of difficulty, in moments of ease, your reaction is being evaluated. So you have to live in this world completely aware of the fact that it is a test and you are being evaluated. And the ones who lose, come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with deeds that are few or with grades that are very low. Why is that the case? Because they did receive the signs, but they were unjust through the signs. So they came to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the signs from Allah came to them, but they committed injustice using those signs. So Allah gives you knowledge, but then you use that knowledge to hurt others, to exploit others. So you actually can commit injustice using the signs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us here not to be from those who don't believe in the signs, and not to be from those who believe in the signs, but then use the signs for their own exploit, for their own gain. So Allah reminds us that what happens, how do people commit injustice using the signs? What are some of those examples? Well, because they forget that they're the ones that are given a gift, and that gift is the gift of earth, the gift of a residence. And they forget who gave them that gift. They start to think of themselves as entitled. So I'm not entitled to the word, the life here on earth. It's actually a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah reminds us that even your life itself is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who gives you that livelihood. He's the one who gives you that sustenance, that place, that location on earth and within earth. But very few of you are grateful. So look at this here. We're seeing a theme pop up here. The second theme is gratitude. So if we're going to connect the themes, injustice is juxtaposed with gratitude, meaning those who commit injustice are usually because they're not grateful for what they have, and because they don't reflect on the fact that what they have is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're established, and that's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's related to what? Success. Those who are going to come with heavy scales are going to be successful. And who are they? They're the ones that are going to be grateful for what they have, and they're the ones that are going to be aware that Allah is always aware, He's not absent. They're the ones that are going to remember that they're going to be asked and questioned, and they're the ones that are going to remember what? They're going to remember to be reflective, to be aware. And if you go back to the beginning, they're going to be ready to believe in the reminder when it comes. So they're believers. They're already ready for the reminder when it comes. So they're believers, and of course they're humble if you go back to the ayah. So humility, belief, remembering, and belief is going to affect those who remember. And then of course remembrance is mentioned here again in ayah 3. And then we here have the opposite of that, that those who are destroyed, usually they are sleeping at night. They are the ones that are usually resting, taking it easy, becoming complacent and complicit, because they're resting. They're taking life as a joke. They're having all these privileges that they're able to not just sleep at night comfortably and happy, but they're actually able to rest during the day as well. So we have this connection now between or juxtaposition between those who are going to listen to the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reflect on the signs of Allah, be reflective in general, be humble, be grateful, and those who are going to be what? Come to Allah with very low deeds, very low scales. They're not grateful, they take things for granted, they have a sense of entitlement, they're not grateful here, as we mentioned, قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ in ayah 10. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us then that journey through which we're going to be humbled, through which we're going to get rid of any gratitude. Well, you don't own your body. Allah owns your body because He's the one who created you. And not only that, your image, your fashion, your body, Allah is the one who gave you that. So remember, Allah is giving us here opportunities to be grateful that He created us. And if He's the one who created us, then He has the right, ultimate right to tell us what to do. If I make this phone, I get to tell this phone what to do. I code this phone, I program it. I set the purpose that it's supposed to have, and the achievement and the mission and the vision. I'm the owner, I'm the controller, I'm the creator. So Allah reminds us that He's the one who created us, and He's the one who gave us an image, and then He's the one who told the angels to prostrate to our forefather Adam, and they all did except Iblis. He was not from those who prostrated. And we said Iblis comes from the term ablasa, which means to be, again, ungrateful, to give up, to lose hope, to lose track of real weighing and real evaluation. So you see how, subhanAllah, everything is connected here. So let me just stop here at ayah 11 and ask if everyone is following along, and if anyone has any questions, inshallah ta'ala. And I'm checking also so for those of you who are asking about the Zoom link, inshallah, I will post the Zoom link to the main chat. Just give me 1 second. I will post the Zoom link, inshallah, to the Facebook. Right. Let me ask you a question while I post the Zoom link, inshallah. How do you think all of these ayat are going to be connected with the next section, in which we're going to be talking about the story of Iblis and the interaction between Iblis and Adam, and what happens next? How is all of this going to be connected to that? Who can take that on?
We have a question from one of our deaf members.
Yes, تفضلي.
So you had mentioned that the life that we live is a test from Allah. So if we do end up doing wrong actions, or we sin and we ask Allah for forgiveness, will Allah be forgiving us for that? And then will we still have a chance at succeeding in the hereafter?
Very good question. Very good question. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness is vast. It encompasses everything. So the simple answer is yes. As long as you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, and as long as you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a new page and a new slate, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept, and He will forgive you, and He will give you, inshallah, plenty of opportunities to make it up. We know that, for example, in the surah, actually, somewhere in the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that. So maybe we can give this as an exercise. Can someone tell me many sections in the surah reiterate the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiving, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, that if you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you? So who can give me a section in the Quran, or a section in the surah specifically, which has that? That's a question. Feel free, inshallah, to answer if you can. Don't be shy. Your answer, inshallah, will encourage other people to participate as well. So take it on, and inshallah ta'ala, you'll get the ajr for answering yourself, and get the ajr for encouraging others also to answer. Let me see if does anyone have
say ayah 23. قال ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. It's about like forgiveness, that Adam asks God for forgiveness.
Excellent. So if you look at ayah 23, that's an example where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us they made the dua, oh Allah, if you don't forgive us and have mercy upon us, we will indeed be from the losers. So from those who lose, they're the ones who give up. They're the ones who lose hope. They don't turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they make a mistake. Like Iblis, that's exactly what Iblis did. Iblis said, I made a mistake so big that I can't turn back to Allah. So part of being humble is to admit that mistake and turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards that act. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the act of humility and gives those who have that humility the opportunity to attain forgiveness. Does that make sense? So this is, again, a very good reminder for all of us May Allah bless you. What are other sections in the Quran, in this surah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about forgiveness and how those who are forgiven or those who ask for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the opportunity to be forgiven? We're going down together. See if you can spot one, inshallah.
Is it the series of stories with Banu Israel where they continued to disobey and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave them? So for example, when they worshipped the cow made of gold, and then they asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness afterwards?
Exactly. So right away from the very beginning, right away from the very beginning of the section, we're given here a reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive, and we're given here a reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave Adam and gave Iblis the opportunity. Iblis was still given the opportunity to speak, to ask for something, but instead of asking for forgiveness, he asked actually to be given the opportunity to do this and to do that and to basically rebel. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that to him. And that goes to show you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can grant without exception. And when he grants, it doesn't take anything away from his power. Excellent. So we see here Iblis, he refused because he said, I'm better. He made that first analogy, which was false. I'm better because I'm made out of fire and this person is made out of clay. And that goes to show we should not talk about benefit and harm. We should not talk about from a human point of view, from a very limited point of view. Because when we talk about benefit and harm from a human point of view, we're still employing human limited constructs. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that objective source that is not bound by anything else. So here, the command comes to Iblis, فَهْبِطْ مِنْهَا. And this goes to show you there are two, فَهْبِطْ and فَخْرُجْ. And فَهْبِطْ means go down in rank. So he's going to be actually removed in rank, and he's going to also be removed from Jannah, from paradise itself. And this is a reminder here that there is no place for arrogance in Jannah. And instead of making dua to Allah here in ayah 14, he says, oh Allah, give me the opportunity to live until the day that they're resurrected. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to him just like that. Here, it's yours. And then he says, فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. So Iblis, he blames Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, well, because you put me up to this, you set me up for this, I will sit on the straight path. And that goes to show you, Iblis, he, instead of taking responsibility for his action, blames on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're given here a dichotomy between Adam and between Iblis. What does Adam say? Adam doesn't say, Bima aghwaytani anta ya Allah, because you did this to me. Adam actually says, what does he say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? As you mentioned, my sister before, Rabbana zalamna anfusana. Oh Allah, we have wronged ourselves. It's not like you have wronged us, you did bad to us, we have wronged ourselves. So we have made that bad decision by not protecting the boundaries that you've set. So right away here, you see the dichotomy, that you can compare this Rabbana zalamna anfusana to what Iblis himself says. And Iblis says, Bima aghwaytani. And this is again how we should be reading the Quran in relation to itself. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds Adam, uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah. Here we're shown again the gratitude, reasons to be grateful. Allah is the one who gave Adam a wife, and he's the one who gave Adam and Hawa a beautiful paradise to stay in. And we talked about this paradise from a theological point of view. It could be the same paradise that we're promised. It could be a different paradise. It could be a paradise in the linguistic definition. Go back to your notes to remember that. And he tells them, don't even come towards this tree, because then you will be from those who wrong themselves. You will be from the wrongdoers. And notice that the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't even come near it, is given for sins or for actions that are difficult to resist. Allah doesn't even say don't do it. Allah says don't come near it. So whenever you hear something in the Quran where Allah says don't even come near it, like zina and alcohol, Allah says fajtanibuh for zina, for alcohol, and Allah says wala taqrabu zina for zina, because those two things are hard to resist. That you can give yourself a false sense of security and you think everything is okay, but in reality that is not the case. And here we see the story of Iblis and Adam back and forth, and how that struggle comes again in stages. Shaitan goes in stages, whispers, wes. He gives a little bit of a suggestion and then another suggestion and gives some time. So that wes, the sound, suggests and implies a continuation. The shaitan is not going to just try once or twice. He's going to try again. And that's again and again and again. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him as shaitan al-khannas in the Quran. Al-waswas al-khannas. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس. From the evil of the one who does that waswasa, and then khannas. So he whispers and leaves, gives you some time, whispers and gives you some time. Tamam? And we talked about how shaitan will tempt people by promising them false things, that this is actually going to benefit you, that this is going to allow you to be angels, you're going to be like angels, you're going to live forever. So shaitan will try to attach and make beautiful the wrong and make ugly the halal. He will make disgusting the halal and he will make ugly the haram and the unlawful. And he will actually take oaths. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. So here we are given a reminder about the plots of shaitan, the tricks of shaitan. What does he do? He comes as an advisor. I'm not there to control you. Who am I to tell you what to do? I'm just advising. And that, subhanAllah, remember, shayateen can also come in the form of human beings. So imagine those who come to you with the intention of giving advice, those who come to you with the intention of giving counsel. Ask yourself, how many of those are well-intended? And maybe sometimes, they are, but also question and be critical of where you're receiving your information and who stands to benefit from your belief, and also be critical of the genealogy of your idea. فَدَلَّاهُمَا بِغُرُورٍ. We talked about dalla again, means gradual. When you put something down the well, it goes down. And فَلَمَّا ذَاقَ الشَّجَرَةَ بَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا وَطَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ. We talked about how sin begins to show the vulnerabilities, the weaknesses that you have. So shaitan's job is to show that weakness and vulnerability that you have, to open your eyes up to a whole side of you that is full of vulnerability and weakness. And shaitan stands to benefit from that because, it makes him feel better about himself, and it makes him feel, again, as if he has some sort of power. So don't give shaitan that power, and don't allow shaitan that space to work within your life. And let's just pause here for a second, and let's move all the way back, all the way to the end of the surah, just to make this, subhanAllah, and to make those interesting connections. At the very end of the surah, can everyone see the screen still? Please put your hand up if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect, excellent. So let me ask you this. What is the advice that we get at the end of the surah, directly and indirectly, for how to deal with shaitan? The very end of the surah, what's the advice that we get?
Is it that part that says إن ينزغنك الشيطان فاستعذ بالله? Is that the part?
Excellent. So it's
Allahu Akbar.
You got a little excited there, mashallah. That's good. Alhamdulillah. Yes, so those two ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, when a suggestion, even a nudge, a small temptation comes from shaitan, right away turn to Allah. You cannot confront shaitan directly on your own, turn to Allah. So whenever you hear those temptations coming, that weakness coming, right away turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the way that you gain strength. You're not going to confront shaitan on your own, turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then also, how do you do that? How should you turn to, what should you do? Well, when you begin to realize that shaitan is doing tawaf, ta'if, it's here translated as an evil thought, but it's also could be understood as what? As shaitan doing tawaf. So when shaitan begins to do tawaf around an individual, right away you remember. What do you remember? Tadhakkaru. What do you remember? You remember your purpose. You remember this original discussion. You remember the original story. You remember that shaitan is an enemy. You remember what shaitan did to Adam. You remember all of those things. You remember the surah. So by remembering, then you're able to see clearly. When you're able to remember all of those things, then you're able to see the plot of shaitan as it is. So you see here how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that connection between the beginning and the end of the surah. And this is all related to the ring structure as we discussed earlier. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also at the end says, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. So some people are gonna give you advice, but it's not going to be sound advice because they're ignorant. They don't have knowledge. They don't know what they're talking about. So you don't take everything that people say around you too seriously. You have to ask yourself, is this person a person of knowledge? Is this person a person of reflection? So this here is a reminder to also turn away from those who are going to be shayateen from the human beings. Shayateen al-ins wa shayateen al-jinn. Excellent. So you see here how the two are connected. The beginning and the end of the surah are connected. طيب. Let's go back again to the very beginning and let's continue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the human beings, reminds the Muslims, reminds you and me that when they committed sins, when Adam and Hawa committed sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgave them. Allah forgave them. But what happened? The sin created the precursor or the environment for a test. That means when we commit sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive us. But what happens? We may have to be lowered in rank, and we may have to do what? We may have to make it up again. We may have to be tested again. So when a sin is committed, Allah can forgive. Yes, Allah can forgive. Maghfirah and rahmah, as mentioned here. But they still had to be lowered. They still had to be lowered from Jannah to earth. So this teaches us to think about the implication and the impact of sin. وَإِنَّ الْمَرْءَ لَيُحْرَمُ مِنْ رِزْقٍ قَدْ كَتَبَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ بِخَطِيئَةٍ يَعْمَلُهَا. So I want you to remember here from now on, anytime that you're about to commit a sin, remember this ayah. اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو. بعضكم لبعض عدو. And the ulama of tafsir here say that the sin leads to a lower state with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a lower state in this dunya. Even if you still achieve greatness, you could have achieved more. So look at your sins as obstacles that are going to prevent you from achieving your full potential with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and achieving full greatness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of this ayah. And also look at your sin, the sins that you commit, as a source of enmity. As a source of enmity. Like they're actually going to do what? It's going to make you become an enemy with someone else. Who's the enemy? Shaitan. So the sins lead to two things: lower position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lower ranks, and also not just that, also enmity. And that's why some of the ulama like Abu Hanifa and others used to say, and I think Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal says something very similar: anytime I would feel tension between me and people around me, between that struggle, that dialectic struggle between me and people around me, I would always ask myself, what sin, what wrong have I committed against myself? What injustice have I committed against myself? Because everything is interrelated, subhanAllah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But still, even though that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lowers you in position, there's still rahmah in the way that Allah does it, because He still gives you a dwelling place, and He gives you livelihood, and He gives you pleasure. Like this dunya is not just a place for, devastation and hurt and pain. It's not like suffering where we're just sitting there suffering all the time. No, there are plenty of opportunities to have beautiful pleasures and to experience beautiful pleasures in this dunya, but that's not the point. Those are just means to keep us going, because our final home is where? Our final home is Jannah. How do we know that? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what? Uskun anta wa zawjuka al-jannah fakula min haythu shi'tuma. Jannah eventually is the second. That's the real dwelling. That's the real second. But the dunya is what? The dunya is just ihbitu ba'dukum li ba'din adu fil ardi mustaqar. So the place Jannah is a second, but the dunya is just a mustaqar. It's just a dwelling place. It's like a hotel. It's like a rest stop. So remember this. And it's just a temporary livelihood. It's just temporary pleasure. So the dunya is a mustaqar and a mata', but Jannah is a second. And a second is a tranquil place of relaxation, tranquil place of calm, and true residence. So make those comparisons again. Look at the linguistic subtleties that are mentioned. Tamam. Moving on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this world, we're going to live in it, we're going to die in it, and then we're going to be brought forth from it, from this dunya, and then to move on back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this section, you can say from 26, we have a new section that starts. And that section is going to talk about the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sheltering us with taqwa. So taqwa, we said, is to protect ourselves by protecting the boundaries that Allah has set. When you protect the boundaries that Allah has set, you're keeping yourself intact. You're keeping away from the vulnerabilities. You're keeping away from those weaknesses. It's like when you have a screen protector, and when you have a phone case, those are protective measures that you take to prevent yourself from figuring out the vulnerabilities of your phone. Does that make sense? You don't have to worry about the vulnerabilities of the phone or the weaknesses if you do your best to protect. You don't have to get to that level. But now your screen is cracked. So you're like, oh man, now I have to struggle to read. And now the vulnerability of the phone is manifested. So imagine someone coming to break your phone intentionally because they want to show how vulnerable it is. But that vulnerability is there. Why? Because it's part of the design. In order for the phone to be smooth and to be beautiful and to be hip and to be cool and to be accessible and to have that weight, the creator gave it a specific design. And the vulnerabilities that come with that beautiful design are stated, and you're told to protect those vulnerabilities. So same thing with the human being. People can ask, why are we created to have emotion? Why are we created to feel sorrow and sadness? When in reality, you know, we could have been created differently. Well, Allah is the one who created, remember? He's the one who خلقناكم ثم صورناكم. So go back to this ayah. Which ayah was that? وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَرْنَاكُمْ. Ayah 11. Allah is the one who created, and Allah is the one who gave us a shape. He gave us a fashion. He gave us a form. So with that form, with that tasweer, comes what? Comes vulnerabilities. But Allah is the one who sent down clothing to protect your vulnerabilities. And on top of that, gave you extra adornment. So what is the adornment? Taqwa. Taqwa, that's the best. ذَلِكَ خَيْر. That is the best clothing. So imagine the things that Allah tells you to do, they're there to protect you. They're there to make you in the most presentable and the most beautiful of ways. So this is how, again, this is connected. Everything is connected so far. I hope you're able to follow. Can anyone share with me reflections, just to make sure, I want to make sure that you're listening along, inshallah. Your reflections so far. Anyone?
So Sheikh Hosam, we have a question again from one of our deaf brothers.
Yes, go ahead.
So Sulaiman's asking, you had mentioned that, you know, we're living in this world temporarily, and our home is in the Jannah, in the hereafter, right? But some people might end up in hellfire, in Jahannam, as opposed to Jannah. Those are options as well for those who don't do well.
Yeah, so for those who do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them to do, and who commit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the struggle here is, I know a lot of the brothers and sisters from the deaf community have just joined recently, and they haven't been again attending from the very beginning. So a lot of content that we're sharing. So forgive me, inshallah, for having to summarize for those who have already heard this, and for the different levels in the audience. But just to recap, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that decision with justice and with compassion. Those who know him and connect with him, they will go to Jannah. They will go to Jannah. And those who do the best that they can in this dunya to connect with him and to know him and to love him and to be attached to him, they will go to Jannah. And those who are in a position where they intentionally ignore that reality, and they're shown signs over and over again, and they ignore it, those separate themselves from Allah. So they choose not to go to Jannah. So they make that choice of not going to Jannah, of separating themselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah not make us among them, Ya Rab, Ameen. طيب, from the regular core group, I want to hear from you, inshallah. What reflections do you have so far? Bismillah.
Sheikh.
Yes, Sonny.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started off as he put a lens where you're giving gratitude, and then that avoids you from the destruction which leads you to Jannah eventually, right? And in every single story that he's telling, there's always that general theme where you're showing gratitude, such as, you know, like that's like the lens that you're looking at every story through. And you're like Shaitan and Adam al-Islam, he's always giving you complimentaries to each side, where Shaitan is the one that's not being grateful, and you're looking through that lens of gratitude. And then same with the magicians and Fir'aun.
Excellent. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Can you say that in another way? Say what you just said in another way, because I think some of the sisters and brothers from the Muslim deaf community, they lost the focus for a second. Can you say that again? That same connection. Just say it in a simpler way.
So you're given a lens, like you're given a theme to look at this whole surah with, which is, if you're not grateful, it's going to lead to your own punishment. And that's what you got to look at every single story with whenever you're looking through this whole surah. And then through that lens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you both the evil side of it, which is like Iblis and Fir'aun, and then what happens to the good people that held on to the iman and were grateful. Like how yeah.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair, Sonny. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is a clear, explicit command. O children of Adam, do not be tempted, just like Shaitan was able to tempt your parents, Hawa and Adam, and through that temptation, he was able to take them out of Jannah. And not only that, he took away their clothing. that thing that protect them against all those vulnerabilities. And remember that he sees you from where you were not able to see him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave, that edge over you. So you have to always remember and be conscious and be aware of that. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا الشَّيَاطِينَ أَوْلِيَاءَ لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. So we have made the shayateen friends and allies for those who do not believe, So they're only going to be supportive, they're only going to actually have an impact on those who don't believe. But those who take time to reflect, to think, to articulate themselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to connect, to make dua, Ya Allah, guide me, Ya Allah, I'm lost without you. They're the ones that are going to receive that guidance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here gives us an example of the gradual change in sin. That when they do something that is completely horrible and immoral and shameful, what do they say? Well, we found our forefathers doing it and Allah ordered us. So something that was shameful eventually becomes a ritual, or not, eventually becomes a ritual, but before it becomes a ritual, everyone is doing it. So the sin becomes a norm, and then when it becomes a norm, it becomes a ritual. So this is the nature of the sin. It starts off as a sin, clear and vivid. Your fitrah is calling against it. Your nature is telling you this is bad. But eventually it becomes what? It becomes a norm, everyone is doing it, and it becomes a ritual. And we gave the example of how people started to remove clothing around the Kaaba. So for those of you, inshallah, who are not, who don't remember this, go back to the notes to reflect. But this is the nature of the sin. So this goes to show you the evolution of sin. So remind them, O Muhammad, that Allah orders only that which is just and fair. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to establish your face towards every masjid. Why? Because they actually inserted into the religion an idea that you should only go to this specific masjid, and don't go to that specific masjid, and don't go to this specific place. But in reality, وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ, all the masajid are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is an example again of the rituals that they've done, taken away from people's commitments and adding on to the deen. And also another understanding here is if you want to be committed to Allah, if you want to be grateful, if you want to receive the guidance, what should you do? Go towards the masajid. Make your masjid a home. Go to the masjid, reflect. And what should you do when you go to the masjid? Ud'uh, pray to him, invoke him, ask him. So you want guidance, you're confused, you're lost? Ask him, where should I go? In places that you can do from your home for sure, especially now, but go to specific places. And masjid is a place where people come and gather to sit and to reflect, to pray together. So go to the masjid, because when you go to the masjid, you're going to connect with people who are going to do what? They're going to help you set a new social norm, set a new standard. They're going to help you see, you're going to see that their actions and deeds, they're going to remind you to stay firm, to stay focused. So go to the masjid if you're looking for that guidance and pray to him, ask him. But how should you do it? Sincerely. And you should have your faith and your religion devoted to him, not towards the priests or the rabbis or the clergy or the imam. No, your deen should be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The imam might be giving you guidance, might be helping you, but your connection is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember that you started off alone in the womb by yourself. Similarly, you go back to him alone, and no one else will be there for you. Your social norms, your rituals that you've added onto, all of these things that you've added, they're not going to be of any benefit. You're going to go back to Allah alone, just like you started with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. A group has been guided because when they go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're guided. Why? Because they chose to do what they have to do. They chose to do what they were told to do. And others, they were misguided. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes the guidance and the misguidance to him, to remind you that even the guidance and the misguidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who allows that to happen. No one goes astray. Iblis did not do what he did because he had autonomy and agency. That autonomy and agency was not within the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was still within the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no one goes astray except through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one is guided except through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that Allah misguides them, but it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who sets the criteria for guidance and misguidance, guidance and lack of guidance. And when people meet the criteria, he gives them guidance. And when people don't meet the criteria, they're left to go astray. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still in charge. We have agency within the ability and the capacity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tamam? And the very terrible thing about people who go astray again, why do they go astray? Because they follow shaitan and they make him the first awliya, they make shaitan their number one. They follow their whims and desires, their whispers from shaitan. They make that number one rather than going back to the Quran and going back to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And then they convince themselves that they're guided. Oh yeah, we're good. We're better than others. We're this, we're that. So this is the issue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us here why people go astray. So remember that He's the one who's in control. So do what? Turn to the masajid and pray with sincerity. Remember that you're going to go back to Him alone. So why wait till you go back in the akhirah? Go to Him alone. In that time alone, when you're at home at home by yourself, pray to Allah, ask Allah for guidance. And don't give yourself the impression that you're guided, because that could be from the temptation of shaitan. Oh, you're good, you're good. Don't worry. Don't get up and pray. You've done enough. So these are all some of the tricks of shaitan to get you to slow down or to get you to lose focus and to lose that steadfastness. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, a recommendation of how to what? How to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on an individual level, and also how we should be when we go to the house of Allah. Because remember, there were people who said, oh, we're not going to go to the house of Allah except when we take everything off, because we want to come back with humility. Allah says, no. Don't come up with your own version of humility. Allah is the one who tells you what is humble and what is not. So come to the masjid with your clothes, dress in the most beautiful way, eat and drink, but don't be extravagant. So some people say, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to live a life of complete, I'm going to be a complete ascetic. I'm nothing to do with the dunya. I'm going to divorce the dunya and the dunya divorces me. And we mentioned that the dunya is nothing, but it's everything. So the Quran here gives balance. Don't make the dunya everything, but don't make it nothing. It is everything because it's what you need to get to Allah, but it's nothing because intrinsically has no value by itself. Its value is dependent on what you take from it with you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the akhirah. So ya bani Adama, khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid. When you go to Allah, dress well. When you get up to pray, pray with beautiful clothing. Take it seriously. Take your ibadah seriously. It's not just you should get up and you're tired, you're exhausted, and go, oh, Allah. No, take it seriously. Go to Allah with strength, right? And this is actually mentioned in the surah elsewhere when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to Musa. Does anyone know where this is mentioned also? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the Prophet to take it seriously, to take the deen seriously, to have strength. Where else is that mentioned in the surah? Making connections again. Okay.
Is it when he... Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Is it when he went to go meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the 30 or 40 days?
Tell me the specific ayah.
I can't help you with that, bro.
That's okay.
I'll find it right now.
Look through.
Sheikhna, assalamualaikum. Is it the one that says وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 ليلة وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بعشر فتم ميقات ربه 40 ليلة وقال موسى لأخيه هارون أخلفني في قومي وأصلح ولا تتبع سبيل المفسدين ولما جاء موسى لميقاتنا كلمه ربه قال ربي أرني أنظر إليك قال لن تراني ولكن انظر إلى الجبل. Is that the one?
Okay, so let's go to that. You're in the right section. You're in the right section. What ayah is that? 143.
143. So yeah, 143.
Yes. Excellent. Let's go to 145. What does it say here? Look at the screen. What does it say?
You want us to read it?
Yeah, right here.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وكتبنا له في الألواح من كل شيء موعظة وتفصيلا لكل شيء فخذها بقوة وأمر قومك يأخذوا بأحسنها الله سأريكم دار الفاسقين.
Do you see the connection? Allah says here, take it with strength. Take the book with strength. Take the guidance that comes to you from Allah with strength. So this is connected again to خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد. Like when you go to the masjid, go with purpose, go with determination, dress well, take it seriously because you're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it matters to you, then you should do what?
It's not even on here.
Some of you...
I think that's the one we were supposed to use.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah, so there was someone talking in the background. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ مسجد. Take your deen seriously. Take your dress seriously when you go to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excellent. So let's go back. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one thing. You said that it's the part that says لكل شيء فخذها بقوة وأمر قوم. فخذها بقوة. But I thought it was the other part where it says وأمر قومك يأخذوا بأحسنها.
Yeah, so for the prophet, take it with purpose, and for your community, take it and take the best of it for your life circumstances and for your situation. And what does that mean? Remember, we talked about this last time. The prophet has to take everything and has to explain everything. But with the Muslim or the people that are around the prophet, they, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the Prophet Musa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or any of the prophets, they can take from the Quran, not just a section and leave everything else, but they can take a section that makes sense holistically and focus on that in their specific life. So let's say I'm a physician. I don't have to necessarily know every little detail of inheritance laws because I'm not a judge. So, but for being a physician, I'm going to have to take from the deen, the ethics, and anything that has to do with my specific purpose and my specific focus in my career and in my life. So that's what it means. So command your community to take the best of it, to take that which is best for them. There's no way you can encompass everything. There's no way you can do everything. The deen is an ocean. But from the deen, you take as much as you can, and you still don't take parts and leave parts. So that's where it's wrong. But you take holistically what applies to you within, again, the whole, which it still makes sense when looked at in relation to the whole. Does that make sense? Abdul Malik?
Jazakallah khairan, Shaykhna. Yeah, no, thank you. I guess it does make a difference between like how a prophet should approach the revelation and how the community is supposed to implement it, apply it to their lives. Jazakallah khairan, Shaykhna.
Jazakallah khair. Allah يكرمك. يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. قل من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده والطيبات من الرزق. So you have people here, you have, subhanallah, two things. You have someone who's going to say, you know what, life, just don't judge me. I'm going to buy 55 Lambos and 20 Lamborghini, 20 Ferraris, and I'm just going to live my life. Allah gave it to me. So don't tell me what to do with my money. Allah says, don't be extravagant either. So eat and drink, enjoy your life, but don't be extravagant. And remember, when you see someone wearing beautiful clothes or dressing well within moderation, don't judge them. Don't say, who are you to? Because remember the companions, when they went to do an tawaf around the Kaaba with clothes, everyone mocked them. Oh, shame on you, this is not right. So Allah asked this question to those who are in that specific moment and to everyone in general. Who are you to make haram what Allah has made halal? You know, sometimes we make haram what Allah has made halal, and we make halal what Allah has made haram. So you see people judging others for doing halal things, but giving others more leeway and being accepting when they do, judging others when they do halal things and giving others acceptability and forgiveness when they do haram things. And one idea that comes to mind, or maybe I can hear from you, give me an example of some things that some things like we do that with. We look at someone who's doing something halal, but it may not be socially acceptable to us, but we judge them. But we look at someone who's doing something haram, and because it's socially acceptable, we let it go. We don't say much. So give me an example. Who can give
maybe
me
maybe like niqab?
Yeah, like niqab. So we'll look at a woman who wears the niqab as an understanding of the deen and as a way of drawing herself closer to Allah, and we'll judge her. And we'll say, oh, look at you, what's wrong with you? This doesn't make any sense. You were the one who gives us all a hard time. It's because of you that the ummah is persecuted. There's no need for this. So we bully the niqabi, and then when someone else is doing something really haram, give me an example.
Really long beard? Oh, haram, sorry.
Yeah.
Like clubbing or something.
Yeah, someone going clubbing will say, oh, it's okay. Allah will forgive him. It's his social circumstances. It's her, So we give those excuses, subhanallah. Does that make sense?
Facts.
Yeah, facts. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us the good things in this dunya are for the believers in the hereafter and specifically for them on the day of resurrection. Do you see how beautifully this ayah is worded? It is for the believers still in this dunya, but it's exclusive for them in the akhirah on the day of resurrection. So this is beautiful, because some people say, oh, the stuff in this, the good things in the dunya, or the good things are only for people who don't believe. Dunya is a sijn al-mu'min. The dunya is a cage for the believer. No, it's a cage compared to the hereafter, because there's just so much more in the akhirah. But it doesn't mean we should live this world like we're in a cage. Tamam? So this is very important conceptually in Mecca to make this clear, that the mu'min can be strong. The mu'min has to have purpose. The mu'min dresses well. The mu'min, قُمْ فَأَنذِرْ وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِّرْ. Beautify your clothing. طيب. So what then does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make haram? Does Allah just make things arbitrary? This is haram, this is halal? No. Allah makes haram things, the shameful things. The things which will show the weakness and the vulnerability of the human being, as we discussed before. The things that will show weakness and vulnerability, whether apparent or hidden. And the things that do what? The things that will oppress others. بغي, بغير الحق. And the things that will show ingratitude by associating with Allah that which doesn't belong to Him, or that which is not in the same place or position as Him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make things haram arbitrarily. He does not make things halal arbitrarily, even though He can. But in many of those circumstances, in all of those circumstances, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who legislates. But in that legislation, there's wisdom. There's khair in it for the person. There's khair in it for the individual. There's khair or good in it for everyone involved. Tamam? And of course, really, really terrible is to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which is not true. Like the Meccans were doing. They were making random claims about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted them to worship. So again, this is a reminder. Part of that gratitude is to be grateful to Allah in the way that He wants it to be grateful. Not to be grateful to Allah in a way that you think you should be grateful. Oh, I'm going to go do 17 yoga moves around the Kaaba, and that's my prayer, and that's my way of showing Allah that I'm grateful. No, show gratitude to Allah based on the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to be grateful. طيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reminds us, for every community, there's a deadline. And when that deadline comes, there's not going to be an extension for an hour, and there's not going to be an early taking, even by a few minutes. Everyone, there's no advancing, there's no proceeding, there's no remaining behind, there's no delaying, there's no deferring. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for a community to come, it will be the time. So what is this talking about? This is connected to Quraysh. They're in a position where they're mocking the Muslims, they're joking about the Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them here clearly, there's a time. And when that time comes, you will be held accountable. Remember, where's the ayah that says we're going to be held accountable? فَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الَّذِي أُرْسِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. Right here, ayah 6. Everyone will be asked. So when is that asking? Well, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge. But every nation, every community has a fixed term. And when that term comes, there's no delay for an hour, and there's no coming early. Tamam. Ya bani Adam. So now human beings are addressed. Now that you know that you're going to have to answer in front of Allah, Allah is going to send messengers to tell you what you should do. They're going to tell you my signs, my ayat. They're going to help you see the ayat around you. So when they come to you, what should you do? You should have taqwa, and you should do islah. Reform yourself when the ayat come, and have taqwa. Protect yourself when the ayat come. And those who do that, they will have no fear over the future, and they will have no sorrow over the past. No regrets of what has happened, no anxiety for the future. So remember here, this ayah is talking about the end and how everyone has an end. And now that you know you have a beginning and an end, and you come from Allah, and to Allah you're returning, as we discussed in the ayat, Allah is sending you a prophet, a messenger that will tell you, that will share with you stories and ayat, signs, to wake you up and to get you to reflect. When you listen to those ayat and protect yourself by protecting the boundaries, you will have no fear and no sorrow. But those who deny the signs when they come, and they're arrogant, you see, takdeeb and istikbar, those are the two themes again. They deny and they're arrogant. Those are the ones that are going to do what? They're going to be companions of the fire. Not dwellers, but companions of the fire. They're so acquainted with the fire that they own it. وَلِعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And this is again from the literary powers of the Quran to show you how acquainted, how much punishment. They're experiencing so much punishment that they become owners of the place of punishment, dwellers of the place of punishment. And the punishment is not just there for a few days, few months, few years. It is eternal. It is eternal. And that is part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deterring us, pushing us to do the right thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says again, reiterates the point that was mentioned here. The point that was mentioned here is وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Do not say about Allah that which you do not know. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته. So how is this? Let me make sure that you're paying attention here. How is this ayah here, 37, connected to the prophets and messengers being sent? يا بني آدم يأتينكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي. And how is it related to this? وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. How is it that you say about Allah that which you do not know? So don't say about Allah what you don't know. Prophets and messengers are going to come to tell you what you should know. So don't make up lies and invent and attribute to Allah lies or untruths. So how are they connected? Miguel, are you with me?
Salam, yes, I'm here. I'm just away from my computer for 1 second. I'll be back in like 1 sec.
Sure. Abdullah Sheikh?
Here, Sheikh.
How is this connected?
I mean, both of the ayahs. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that both of the ayahs talk about, fabricating lies against what Allah has said and trying to change, the norms and trying to change the truth and just basically following based on subjective, desires. And I'm still trying to put together how it's related to the time of the Prophet ﷺ being sent. So if you could help out there, that'd be good.
Sure. So let's do this together. You're with me?
Yep.
So the messengers come to tell the ayat, revelation. So the messengers come with revelation. Why are they usually denied? Why are the messengers denied? Or what could be some of the reasons? What are some of the reasons that they're denied? Sometimes because people say about Allah things that are not true. So when someone says about Allah that which is not true, everyone else who says something about Allah is automatically questioned. So one of the reasons that messengers are denied is because people take on that role of saying things that they don't know. So imagine if we all adopted a rule: when I don't know about Allah, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to remain quiet. Then when those who speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who possess true knowledge, their voice is going to be louder. But we saturate the voices when everyone says their opinion. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Excellent. So what happens to those
Sorry,
who
I just wanted to add also,
Yes.
in ayah 36, it says the two descriptions of those people, which is denial and arrogance, right?
Right. That those who don't believe in the messengers, they deny, or they're arrogant. Exactly.
Yeah.
They deny, and some of the reason why they deny it is because people say things about Allah that are not true. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us that connection. Are you with me so far?
Yeah. Jazakallah.
Wa jazakum. So what happens to them? What happens to those who lie? They will get their portion of what is written for them. They will still live lives of luxury and happiness, and it's okay. Why they get that? Because remember, لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ أَجَلٍ. For every nation, and by default, every member of that nation is a fixed term. They're going to have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't be surprised when those people are getting their portion of dunya. Like someone is lying and, using religion as a way to exploit people. They have big mansions and they have a big private jet. Don't let that cause you what? Anxiety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is eventually going to hold that person accountable. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the mawazeen. Does that make sense? There's a time for mawazeen to be set straight. There's a time for the mawazeen to be set straight. When is that time? That day. Do you see that here? That day. What day is that? The day of resurrection. So that's the day in which the mawazeen are set. Are you with me so far? So now we're connecting the surah together. We're connecting the ayat together. And for those of you who have joined us live on Facebook, I will inshallah look at your questions to see if you have any. And the link is there for the Zoom. Feel free to join us, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallah fikum. Excellent. So let's continue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us on that day, so they will get their portion of what's written for them until they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the messengers, the angels, are sent to take their life. And then during that time, they're going to be asked, what did you do when you were in this dunya? Did you worship Allah? And then they will say, ضَلُّوا عَنَّا وَشَهِدُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَنَّهُمْ كَانُوا كَافِرِينَ. So they will be asked, did you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where are those that you used to worship besides Allah? Where are those that you used to call on to besides Allah? And then they will say, well, they're not here for us anymore. So imagine those people who lied for money, for power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking them, well, where's your money and power now? Is it here? Can it do anything to you? And of course, the question is no. Right. Let's take, inshallah, a quick break. Let's take a quick 5-minute break to stretch, inshallah. Let's stretch. Let's move around. Let's get some water. Let's get some Any drink that you would like is halal, inshallah, just to keep your energy going and also to give our interpreter a chance, inshallah, to break. And then we'll come back, inshallah, in 5 minutes. And then we'll take another break, inshallah, for Maghrib. And then we'll keep going, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. We are back, Bismillah. Does anyone have any questions so far? Anyone has any questions so far? Please share, inshallah. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Any questions?
I had a very quick one, Sheikh, about the notes. Have we updated them already? Because I only see up till ayah 19. I'm sorry if you already mentioned this before.
Okay. If you can see, the notes are here. So for those of you asked about the notes, alhamdulillah, here are the notes. We have right now 246 pages of notes. They're just in the process of editing. So hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, we'll have those up soon. So you'll have access to the notes in full. This is what they look like. And then in the end, we're going to have a comparison. So here's the, can everyone see? I hope, inshallah, you're able to see. So in the end, we're going to have a comparison chart where we look at the beginning of the surah and the ending of the surah, and then talk about, inshallah, their relationship. So my plan, inshallah, hopefully, we've just been delayed with everything that's been happening. It's been a very heavy workload, but we do need your help, inshallah. If you would like to volunteer, please send me a message. We're working on finishing those notes, inshallah, as soon as possible. And we're hoping, inshallah ta'ala, to have those notes finished within the next, inshallah ta'ala, couple of days. And then when the notes are finished, we're going to send them to everyone who's registered, inshallah. And we'll have a section on the website where you can take one practice test. Inshallah, you can take that one practice test as many times as you want, just to familiarize yourself with the way that the test is delivered and with the online content. And then you can practice and read through the notes, inshallah ta'ala. And then, inshallah, you'll have your opportunity to do your test online, inshallah, for your final certification, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Does that answer your question?
Yep, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
Wa jazakum. So it's pretty...
Sheikhna.
Yes, yes.
Just a quick question. Does Surat al Araf follow the sub-ring structure?
It does, yes.
Allahu Akbar. But not the whole Quran does, right? Just certain surahs.
Pretty much, you could look at the whole Quran, and you could pretty much make very, very strong analytical comparisons, very similar to the ring structure. But Surat al Araf is very strong in that, very strong.
And what's the center of Surat al Araf? Because that's the lub, no?
So when you start from the beginning, you start with the first ayah and you compare with 206, you'll come to, somewhere in the middle, around 100, 103. So this would be the center right here. The center would be of course, depending on the ayat numbering, but the center would be around 103. This ayah right here. وَمَا وَجَدْنَا لِأَكْثَرِهِمْ مِنْ عَهْدٍ وَإِنْ وَجَدْنَا أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَفَاسِقِينَ. And we did not find most of them to have a true covenant, rather most of them were rebellious. And that's an incredible, subhanAllah, section or ayah, because it is very symbolic of pretty much the whole surah. And then, of course, the middle can also be depending on the ayah numbering, because some people actually put it at 204 or 203, and in that it would be actually one of these two ayat. تِلْكَ الْقُرَى نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَائِهَا. We relate these stories to you, O Muhammad. So this ayah, 101, 102, or 103, depending on the numbering. But I'm actually leaning towards 102 being the middle of the ayah, the core.
MashaAllah. لا جزاkallah khairan. Yeah, and وَمَا وَجَدْنَا لِأَكْثَرِهِمْ, that's probably Bani Israel, right? Or the Yehud and Nasara?
Humans in general. Yeah.
وأخذنا منهم ميثاقا. صح. سبحان الله. جزاkallah khairan, Sheikhna.
Jazakum. The reason why it's not just Banu Israel is because here Allah says تِلْكَ الْقُرَى. These are the cities. We relate to you some of their news. So, and he talks about prophets and in general, they did not believe. So it's prophets, cities in general, even though the story switches back to Fir'aun and Musa, right? Or it starts with Fir'aun and Musa next. Here the section actually talks generally about people not believing in general. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakum. Any other questions?
Salam Sheikh, I have a question.
Yes.
So you probably answered this many times before, but I still want to ask. But why does Allah delay the punishment for sin? Because wouldn't more people find it easier to believe if there's clear punishment right after sinning?
Yeah. So we mentioned several reasons. Number one, out of rahmah, Because imagine if someone commits a sin and right after they commit a sin, they're punished. And that punishment is strong enough for that person to notice and for people around him or her to notice, then it's probably going to be devastating. And if people were punished immediately after every single sin that they've committed, then basically there will be very little rahmah. Allah says, actually the ayah here, وَلَوْ يُؤَخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ, here, let me open it for you. مَا تَرَكَ عَلَى ظَهْرِهَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ. So the ayah here, if you open up Surat Fatir, ayah 45, وَلَوْ يُؤَخِذُ اللَّهُ النَّاسَ بِمَا كَسَبُوا مَا تَرَكَ عَلَى ظَهْرِهَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ. If Allah were to impose blame on the people, or if Allah were to punish people immediately for what they have committed, He would not have left a single being on earth. But He delays them for an appointed term, and when their arrival time comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will surely bring them to account, because He's the all-seeing of His servants. Does that make sense? So one of the reasons is because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to punish immediately, there will be no one left. Because we are by default, by nature, because of that free choice that He's given us, and because of everything else that He's set in motion, the parameters, we are inclined towards sin.
Okay. What if the punishment wasn't like devastating though? Like what if it was just like a reminder?
Yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens. But then it's too subtle for people to look at. People start to look at those things as, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, it could be this, could be that. So what happens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does send those punishments. He does send those like minor reminders. So let me open here for you. So I'm using a new keyboard, so I'm struggling to find the.
Yeah, no problem.
1 second. So let's open up Surat al-Sajda 21. I believe it's in Surat al-Sajda 21. Let's open that up here. So right here, if you look at this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we will surely let them taste the minor torment in this life before the major torment. So perhaps they will return to the straight path. وَلَنُذِيقَنَّهُم مِّنَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَدْنَى دُونَ الْعَذَابِ الْأَكْبَرِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them that they will get a small, adna actually means smaller, not nearer, but like smaller. So they will get a small, very small portion before the bigger punishment, so that they come back, so they return. But most of the time, people look at this punishment and they basically rationalize it as something else. They justify it. It doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Sheikh.
No problem. Okay, any other questions before we continue, inshallah? So we're going to go a little bit faster, inshallah, just to put everything together, inshallah. We have a couple of minutes before Maghrib, and then after Maghrib, we're going to have approximately an hour. So we want to finish, inshallah, the whole surah and putting everything together. So this is an episode on Yawm al-Qiyamah. 39, 40 is talking about what's going to happen on the day of resurrection. And it's talking about how terrible the punishment is. So again, deterrence, reminding people that there is no escape, there is no way out. If you don't have that gratitude, once the signs came and once the ayat came and the revelation was clear and Allah made that point clear and you choose not to, then of course there's going to be no way out. And then here in 41, Allah describes the terrible punishment in Jahannam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives hope to the believers. Those who try their best, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to expect from anyone more than what they're able to handle with abundance. They're the ones who are going to get Jannah and they will live there forever. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sandwiches that difficult calamity or difficult image of punishment in the akhirah with hope. Hope that if you do your best and you have belief, Allah will not ask you to do more than what you can do with abundance. So Allah will hold you accountable, but we'll take everything into account. We'll take what you've had access to, your limitations, your vulnerabilities, and your difficulties. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives more hope that when the people go to Jannah, as soon as they go to Jannah, their hearts will be purified and they will be there grateful, and they will be grateful for the guidance, and they will appreciate that the guidance is from Allah. Had it not come from Allah, they would not have been able to find it. And they will admit that the prophets have spoken the truth. And they will be called onto by the angels. This is the Jannah. You got it because of what you used to do. Even though we don't get to Jannah because of our actions, they're told you attained the 3 actions because they were polite with Allah. They said to Allah, Allah, we would not have been able to receive this guidance had it not been for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they dealt with Allah with adab, with ihtiram, with respect, with etiquette, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributes that good back to them. And this is a good reminder here that when you attribute the good to Allah, Allah gives you more. Allah blesses you. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. So that humility goes a long way with people. And of course, it goes a long way with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. It goes a long way with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's the connection then between this? Why is Allah talking about our hearts being purified on Yawm al-Qiyamah? Because when we stand up for truth and when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to speak truth and to share truth, we're going to be persecuted, we're going to be hurt, and there's going to be disagreement. That's the nature of this dunya. There's enmity, there's hatred. So shaitan will get the best of us. Shaitan will get people to fight. So the best of us will have issues and will have resentment, will have disputes, even if we work and do our best to purify. So because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that's the nature of dunya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually will give us the ability to be purified from all of that and to go back to Him, inshallah, with a clear, beautiful state of heart. And of course, this is not to say that we cannot achieve a good, calm state of heart in this dunya. We can, but the absolute beautiful purity is only something in Jannah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an episode here to show us what happens with the people who are Ashab al Araf, the people whose good deeds and bad deeds are equal. Whose good deeds and bad deeds are equal. We have a hand from Amir Atif. So let me give you the mic, Brother Amir.
Sheikh, the question is in regards to the gentleman who asked previously about the punishment. It's a tangent of a tangent. Is the punishment the same thing as inflictions through Allah's command, or is it punishments done by our own actions and the result of our actions?
Excellent question. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking the punishment, is it directly from Allah or can it be through human beings?
Yes, as a self-infliction of their own actions or wrongdoings.
Yeah.
Is that also considered as my minor punishments?
Yeah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do both. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish us through other people, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish us through natural disasters and things like that. And those are not really punishments, because if they bring us closer to Allah, then they're blessings. So at the beginning, they may be punishments in the sense that they can actually wake us up and cause us to be a little bit more restrained and constrained. They might be interruptive and sometimes intrusive, but if they get us to remember Allah, then they're blessings. And so those are examples of things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends as wake-up calls. That's what we can call them, as wake-up calls. And an example of that is if you actually open up, let's do this together. Let's open up here Surat, I believe Surat al-Zukhruf. Let's do this together. Surat al-Zukhruf. So open up Surat al-Zukhruf 43, and let's go to the section that talks about Fir'aun and Musa, because that's a summary of the story that we have here between Musa and Fir'aun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says right here, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى, we sent Musa with our signs, But whenever the signs came, they used to laugh. And then whenever we showed them a sign, we sent another sign which was greater than the one that came before. And وَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِالْعَذَابِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, and we seized them with affliction so that they might return back to Allah. So we seized them with affliction so they might return. So this is a'adab, it's affliction, it's painful. But if it wakes us up and gets us to go back to Allah, then it's actually a blessing. So one of the functions of adab is it forces us to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tamam? And that's what the people did with Musa. The Pharaoh and the people came to him and said, listen, we can't really get rid of all these bad things that are happening to us. You know, the blood and this and that. We talked about the signs that happen in Surat al Araf. So they used to basically say to him, if you ask Allah, ud'u lana rabbak, if you ask Allah to take away this stuff, we're going to be guided. We're going to actually become truthful. We're going to become closer to you. We're going to accept Islam. But instead of becoming closer, إِذَا هُمْ يَنْكُثُونَ فَلَمَّا كَشَفْنَا عَنْهُمُ الْعَذَابِ إِذَا هُمْ يَنْكُثُونَ. When we remove the affliction, they broke their word. So afflictions come to wake people up, and they might wake up temporarily, but eventually they go back. And when they go back, that's when the punishment comes. Does that make sense?
SubhanAllah, Shaykhna, could that apply to COVID-19? How like now everybody is going back to Allah, even the kuffar are making us do adhan in their churches and their congresses and all that.
Yeah, of course, there's definitely an element of divine messaging in everything that happens, whether it's COVID-19 or anything else. And definitely there's an element of divine reminder in the situation for those who are paying attention and reflecting. So yes, the short answer is yes. We have 3 minutes till Maghrib. Any other questions?
Sorry, Sheikh, quick question.
Tafaddal.
It was in my understanding that basically if something happens and it brings you back to Allah, then it's a mercy. And if it's a punishment that distances you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that would be a punishment basically.
Yeah.
But so, then now here we're learning that a punishment can become a blessing depending on how you respond to it basically.
Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the word adab. Adab means affliction, a torment. It's something painful, it's something interruptive, it's something intrusive. So to translate adab as punishment in itself would be a little bit problematic, because the adab will only become a punishment if you do what?
If you respond negatively to it.
Exactly. If you break your word, if you move away from Allah. So when you do that, that's when it's real punishment. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call the punishment here? فَلَمَّا آسَفُونَ انْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ فَأَغْرَقْنَاهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. When they were drowned all, انتقمنا, then we punish them all. So the punishment here is the intiqam. You see that? It translated here as intiqam. We took retribution, the punishment. So the real punishment comes after the sign is sent and the person chooses not to return back. So it's a little bit of like semantics here. So we can say that a terrible thing happens that is intrusive, that is painful, that is difficult. It's not a punishment yet, because if it brings the person back, then it's a blessing. But it becomes a punishment when that person ignores it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it goes hand in hand basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you saying that if we don't behave now after Corona-19, Daddy Corona is gonna come?
Sorry, say that again, Brother Amir.
Are you saying that if we don't behave now after Corona-19, Daddy Corona is gonna come?
Am I saying that if we don't behave after Corona, more Corona
will come?
Yeah, I kind of understood that too.
So again, this is not specifically about Corona. It's general, and it's not me saying this is what the Quran is saying. The Quran is saying Corona, like Corona as an example, it has caused a lot of social shift, but it's nothing compared to what Allah can do. That's what I want us to understand. You know, Corona is horrible. It's affected us all in a negative way, but it's just a small example of how something so small, so tiny can cause so much uncertainty and chaos and commotion to the whole world. So for me, when I look at the Corona, it's a reminder of our weakness. It's a reminder to go back. but I don't see it as a punishment. I see it as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a punishment for those who don't wake up and those who don't take time to reflect. And then what comes next for those people, for those individuals, either individually in their own lives or as a collective to a whole community, Allah knows best what that is. It's not up to me or up to you to decide what that is, but that will be the punishment. So this is the warning. This is the siren going off. This is the alarm saying what you're doing, you should think twice, you should reflect. But it's not necessarily a punishment, because Allah is much more severe. Inna Allah azizun dhu intiqam in his punishment. Does that make sense? Tamam. So we'll take a break now for Maghrib because the adhan has just been called. It's here 7:50. So inshallah we'll take a break for Maghrib. Please pray Maghrib and let's come back inshallah at 8:10. So we'll give ourselves 20 minutes to pray inshallah, relax. After salah, do dhikr and pray the sunnah. And then we'll come back at 8:10 inshallah ta'ala to continue the discussion. Bismillah. Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. How is everyone doing?
Alhamdulillah, Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Let me just pin our sister Rana Hamdi's video so that people can see it as well.
Sheikh, I feel so bad. You're going so fast and she's doing so much workout.
Yes, I know. Forgive us, Sister Rana, for going too fast.
Sheikh Hosam, Sister Maryam has a question. You had mentioned that, you know, at the moment, maybe the coronavirus might be a warning for some, and then it might get even worse. I can't even imagine how this can get even worse. I mean, it's impacted the entire world.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have to understand a few things first. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish except after sending clear warnings and clear signs. So that's one. Secondly, it is not up to us to interpret what is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without having access to revelation. We don't receive revelation, so we can only go back to what the Quran says and make decisions or assumptions based on that. So based on everything that the Quran mentions and makes or asserts, we can assume that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending a wake-up call. Similar things like this happened in the past, and it was a wake-up call. And if people don't listen, of course, the punishment is much more severe. And the punishment, actually, I'm speaking, subhanAllah, for people who know, like me and you, Muslims, who know what we're supposed to do, who receive revelation, who have a clear covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not talking about non-Muslims who may not know, may not have access to revelation, or may have their reasons for not having access to revelation. I'm talking about you and me. This is a warning for you and me. And if we don't go back to what the Quran and the Sunnah say, then the punishment can be much more severe. And what's the punishment? Of course, it could be in Jahannam. And a punishment in Jahannam is much, much, much more severe than anything that the coronavirus can do in this dunya, because this dunya is very insignificant and small compared to the akhirah. So that hopefully clarifies what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Wa jazakumullah khair. Do we have any other questions, inshallah, before we finish the surah, inshallah ta'ala, as much as possible? Okay, طيب. We'll continue, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of this conversation that's going to happen between the people of Jannah and the people of Jahannam. And we talked about this in quite some length. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about His forgiveness again, His capacity to forgive, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will eventually give them Jannah. هؤلاء الذين أقسمتم لا ينالهم الله برحمة ادخلوا الجنة لا خوف عليكم ولا أنتم تحزنون. So this is again a reminder to not lose hope in Allah's mercy, to not despair of Allah's mercy again, and to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even those whose deeds were good deeds and bad deeds are equal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding them to have hope in His mercy. And of course, this is again a reminder that on that day, there will be a conversation between those who made it and those who didn't. And that conversation will be a reminder, like a form of closure for those that have tried their best but were persecuted. So in that, to tie everything again, a reminder, there's going to be closure in Jannah, and of course in Jannah, lots of people, inshallah, who did their best will be recognized and will be honored. And those who've come close, inshallah, through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be given the opportunity. However, this ayah in 51 reminds us not to do what? Not to be ungrateful. Not to sit there and say, you know, I want to be that last person to make it to Jannah. I want to have good deeds and bad deeds as equal, because if you have the attitude, then you've taken your deen as a form of amusement and play. And you've been deceived and deluded by this world. So on that day, you will be forgotten as you've forgotten Allah. So we're talking about someone who's tried their best, but their good deeds and bad deeds were equal despite all possible efforts. Not someone who's intended to be in that position, but someone who did his or her best, but was in that position nonetheless. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that you have the book, you have the covenant. And in that book, there's an explanation for most of the knowledge and guidance and mercy for those who believe. So don't wait until what's in the book comes true. Like, don't wait until the resurrection, Yawm al-Qiyamah, to finally turn back to Allah. Because when that day comes, those who forgot it, they will say what? They will say, oh, it's too late. The prophets and the messengers came, but we didn't pay attention. And they'll ask and they'll advocate, can someone help us now? Or can we be given a second chance? But of course, there are no intercessions except what Allah has willed. Especially for those people, no intercessions, because they were not even from those who put some energy and effort into asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for intercession through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they are, of course, from those who will not be given a second chance, because there's no second chance. There are no second chances. Tamam? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shifts. So imagine, we talk about humility, we talk about the story of Iblis and Adam, gratitude, those are the main themes. Then we turn into an episode on the day of resurrection. And that episode shows what's going to happen on that day. Honor and humiliation. Al-Mawazin, the true evaluation. So everything is connected so far. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of who He is. Who is this Lord that you should be connected to? Who is this Lord that you should pray to? That you should pray to with humility and privately. And the one who does not like transgression. Who is He? He's the one who created you. And He created everything around you. Everything, and He created it in phases, in stages. And then He consolidated all of the power. He ascended to the throne. And He did this in, again, like the creation He did in gradual steps, to remind us to be careful of the gradual steps of shaitan, and to also make sure that our steps back to Him are consistent and sustainable as well. So we're supposed to reflect through this process of creation how we ourselves can, inshallah ta'ala, work towards being the best possible versions of ourselves. And of course, how shaitan will, through the same gradual process, do the opposite. Work towards exploiting our vulnerabilities and showing our weaknesses. And again, we're given another reminder over and over again. Call unto Allah. Remember, He does not like those who transgress. Now, who are those people who transgress? They're the ones who cause corruption after Allah has sent prophets and messengers to fix it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making dua, or telling us to make dua again to Him, asking Him for what? Asking Him with fear and hope for His mercy. And remember that mercy is near for those who excel. So you can't just be making dua without action. Once you excel, the mercy will come. But you have to show Allah your desire, your humility by making that dua. And then we talked about here a beautiful analogy. So humility, gratitude, then the story of Iblis, and then an episode from the Day of Judgment, and then the stories that are about to come. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces that. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before He begins the section on prophets, He gives us an analogy of who prophets are, what they're like. What are prophets like? They are like clouds carrying good news that are sent with that good news to everyone, to ground that is dead, and they bring that dead ground back to life. So this is a reminder, if we want to be honored, we have to be the messengers of the messengers. So we have to be the messengers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have to be those who carry that weight and share it with others. But at the same time, it's a reminder and an introduction to the prophets and the messengers' journey, the ones that are to come. So the journey of Nuh, and the journey of Salih, and the journey of Lut with their people. So they're like clouds. So that's the connection so far. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there's two types of grounds. The good ground will give rise to good fruit quickly. But the bad ground, when that water comes, is going to give rise to little, if anything at all. And that is a reminder that despite your best efforts to teach and to encourage and to share, your impact will only be as good as that ground is ready to receive. So don't blame yourself. Don't blame the prophet. Don't blame the messenger. So this is assurance for the prophets and messengers. And it's assurance for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because this ayah here, 58, is supposed to be understood in relationship to what? In relationship to ayah, the very beginning, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الَّذِي أُرْسِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَنَسْأَلَنَّ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. Ayah 6, where Allah says, we will surely question those who receive the messages from the messengers and those who were sent themselves. So imagine Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is feeling the anxiety. You can imagine he's feeling that weight. Am I doing the best that I can? What if someone doesn't become a Muslim? Is it my fault? Have I done the best that I can to explain it to them? Or am I going to be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends assurance in 57 or 58 that your impact will only be as good as the land, will only be as good as the heart that you're trying to call, will only be as good as the ability for that person to listen. And you can't control that. Only Allah can. So it's there to alleviate that stress, and it's there also for us to do the best that we can and to ensure that we prepare our hearts so that when the reminder comes, we're ready to implement and receive it and share it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives us the example of Nuh. And Nuh's people, they committed a big mistake and a big sin, and that mistake was the mistake of shirk. So they committed shirk. And then we are introduced into the concept of the mala, and how these mala are going to serve as shayateen from the human beings. Go back to the linguistic definition of shaitan. So these mala are going to reinforce and are going to use language that is very careful. Remember the language that they use. And remember Nuh's response. He stays focused, he stays calm, and he says, well, what you're saying is not true. And he stays strong and he stays firm. And he says, I'm going to deliver all the messages despite your resistance, because I know from Allah that which you do not know. And he goes and he communicates with them back and forth, but they deny despite the signs. And they mock him when he's building the ship. But eventually he builds the ship and everyone is drowned because they refuse to see, or they refuse to acknowledge what they saw. So they continue to be blind to the signs that they saw. So here's the first example of a people that disregarded the signs when they came and ignored the prophet when he came. Then we have the people of Ad, and they're going to take it a step further. What they're going to do is they're not going to just say you are misguided. They're going to say you're complete fool. Inna lanaraka fi safaha. So their refusal to believe increases. Their confrontation is more bold, and their accusations are more direct. And this shows us that, and go back to the notes again, we're just summarizing a lot. This shows us again that they're increasing, subhanAllah, in the transgression. And of course, the Prophet here, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hud, maintains his composure and has a dialogue and stays focused. And of course, he tells them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave you all that you have, so don't take it for granted. And of course, they come back and they say, well, show us the sign. Show us the sign. Punish, send us a punishment if you're speaking the truth. And of course, that's what happens, and they're punished. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saves the ones who believed with him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us another example, Thamud, and how Salih was sent to them. And then this time, what they did is they asked for a sign, the sign came, but instead of believing, they actually destroyed the sign, the animal, the female camel. The female camel that they said, hey, we want a rock to turn into an animal, and from that animal, she should be pregnant, and a baby is born. Allah gave them that sign, but instead of believing, they killed the sign. And we said that they killed it for economic reasons, for political reasons, for social reasons, and for their own, again, because it was impacting their own socioeconomic well-being. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us here the punishment that came to them as well. The theme here is that there's gradual increase in the transgression, there's gradual increase in the injustice, and there's gradual increase in the persecution of prophets and messengers, and there's also gradual increase in the resistance. Now, what happens after Salih? After Salih comes, the next people are Lut's people, or the column that Lut is sent to. And then they do something that no one has done before. And that is, they practice same-sex relations. And how this is, again, reprehended in the Quran. And it's clear that the position of the Quran is one that does not endorse that. And Lut continues to remind them to be pure, to purify themselves, and to go back and to reflect on the fitras. So this shows us here how the fitrah over time can change, can be reversed, can be socially re-engineered. How you can actually take something which is a sin, normalize it, and then after you normalize it, it becomes a ritual, it becomes a doctrine, it becomes part of the religion and the tradition. And if it is questioned or if it's criticized, people don't accept that. So the sin becomes so steady and accepted and normalized that the one who resists it or the one who questions it, even with compassion, as Lut is doing, is considered to be an outsider, considered to be weird, considered to be strange. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows how they were destroyed. And then Midian is sent to them, Shu'aib. And what do? They take it a step further. So imagine before it was shirk, it was just ideological, it was just ritualistic. And then from shirk, it became denying and killing the sign. So killing the sign itself. And then beyond that, it became physical lust, physical infidelity. And then beyond that, it became economic injustice. And we talked about how economic injustice and economic abuse, riba, is a greater sin than zina. And this is again confirmed by the Prophet Muhammad's hadith, which we discussed, and confirmed by the Quran. So the gradual change and shift and evolution in bad behavior. And it's there as a reminder for us not to take things for granted. And to remember that just because we are good today and Allah has gifted us today, doesn't mean we're going to be that way forever. So to be critical of where we stand, what we support, what we endorse, and how our support and endorsement may justify or rationalize sin, and maybe the reason why people fall into sin. So that social responsibility. And this is actually connected with what? Connected with the story that we hear here later on in the surah. And that is the story of the people of the Sabbath. The people of the Sabbath, if we go here, وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَاضِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ. And this is mentioned in this section here. In Ayah 163, that there's a group of people who started to break the Sabbath. And at first, everyone was so disappointed and worried for them and stayed away from them. But eventually, it became normalized. And eventually, those who were still advising, they were told, why even bother? Why even bother? And then, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us that those who spoke out were saved, and those who didn't do the act were saved. But those who didn't, who stopped advising, what happens? Allah doesn't speak of them. And Ibn Abbas and others said they were silent, so Allah was silent about them. So this is actually connected. These are all connected. That we have to have social responsibility in terms of what we endorse and what we support. Excellent. So let's go back again. And after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finishes the discussion of these prophets and messengers, what does he do? what does the Quran do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns to, after finishing the story of Shu'aib, let's just go back here. After the story of Shu'aib and the economic injustice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us another story, and that is the story of Musa alayhi salam. But before the story of Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefaces these discussions with a few questions. And these questions are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds, or a few statements. And ayah here, 94, reminds us that whenever we sent to society a prophet, or we sent the prophet to a society, أَخَذْنَا أَهْلَهَا بِالْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَضَرَّعُونَ. We afflict its believing people with suffering and adversity so that they may be humbled. And this is very, very important here. Remember that the adversity and the suffering will only come when a prophet is sent, when the message is clear. So Allah is not going to punish or send suffering and adversity to a community that does not know. So this is a very important ayah. Put 3 stars next to this ayah, especially in our discussion and our current context. Allah is not going to punish a community that does not know. Only when the community has received the signs and decides to turn away from the signs will the punishment comes. And then after that, what happens? When the punishment comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change the condition, or when bad things happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can then change the condition and test the people with good things, good signs. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, if only they have taqwa, Allah would open up the doors and the blessings and pour it upon them. If only they believed, Allah will make their lives better. And Allah will test them in beautiful ways. Meaning that Allah will test you by giving. Allah will test you by empowering. Allah will test you by supporting you, by giving you chances to give. But what are you going to do when you have that? And we have the example of the story of Musa, in which the people are tested at the beginning with hardship. And they're patient. Not everyone is patient. And after the hardship, the people of Egypt are tested with hardship. But after the hardship goes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests them with what? Tests them with ease. Test them with responsibility, with power. Test them by being the chosen people to carry and implement the faith. Did they live up to that standard? Did they do the part? Did they fulfill their covenant? Those are all the themes that are explored in the surah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them, don't take the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or don't give yourself a false sense of security, because the punishment can come when you're playing, when you're sleeping, when you least expected, and that is the true loss. People that are punished despite having clear ayat and signs that encourage them to fall far away from that punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reminds them that we could punish you and the punishment can come directly targeting you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish in the most unexpected way possible. And Allah can punish by sealing the hearts so that you can no longer listen. These are all forms of punishment. So don't expect that Allah is going to punish you with just physical destruction, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish you with metaphysical destruction, and that is much more severe. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away from you the ability to see, the ability to understand, as a result of you failing to see and understand. It's like someone saying, or me as a physician, or you as a physician saying to someone, hey, take this, it's the medicine that you need. I really advise that you take it. And you're like, no, I'm not going to take it because I don't like you, and I'm going to, live without it. So because they're arrogant, you keep inviting them over and over again. But if they refuse too many times, what do? As a form of punishing or disciplining them, you refuse to give that medicine to them directly at all, because they've been given too many chances. So this is a reminder of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can punish you by taking away your ability to see. And that's a really, really terrible punishment. Even greater than the punishment, which is physical. تلك القرى نقص عليك من أنبائها. And we mentioned this is the middle of the surah, or this one. That these stories are there shared with you so that you remember how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works, or how divine will manifests itself. And most people did not have much of a covenant. Most of them were transgressful. So this is a very important theme in the surah here, that don't follow the majority, because the majority, al-akthariya, is usually in the wrong, because very few people lack the commitment and the consistency and the dedication to do the right thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then takes us through a beautiful, beautiful story, and that is the story of Musa and how he's sent. And when he's sent, he tells Fir'aun what Allah told him to do. And then Fir'aun resists. And then Fir'aun says, show me a sign. The sign is shown. Fir'aun refuses. Even though he saw 2 signs, Fir'aun refuses to believe. And Fir'aun says, well, he's just coming to do what? To remove you from your land. He's a terrorist. He's coming to cause anarchy. Then the Mala come in and they say what? Well, set a day in which we test him and we show his weakness to everyone else. Of course, Musa alayhi salam, he agrees, and we know the story, how he defeats the magicians become Muslim. But instead of Pharaoh waking up and realizing that I could be wrong, he became more and more defiant. So imagine the sign came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of a physical miracle. But instead of succumbing and believing, Pharaoh became more deviant, more far away from the truth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sent more signs. And what were those signs? What were those signs? The signs came in the form of tests for Banu Israel. Banu Israel, instead of believing, they said, well, Musa, we were punished because of you before you came, and now we're punished after you. So imagine, subhanAllah, the ingratitude again, a theme. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we tested the people of Pharaoh with years of famine, deficiency in fruits and in provisions, so that they may remember. But when good things happen, they said it's because of us. When good things happen, Pharaoh would say, hey, look at my policy. It's doing wonders. I'm saving you. And when bad things happen, they blamed it on Musa. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us the way that people rationalize. You know how we said the signs come, but people choose to not look. People choose to overlook, to turn away. So Musa's there, and instead of saying, Allahu Akbar, Musa, a prophet, is amongst us, people say, well, look, we're being punished. Our kids are still being killed. It's because of you, Musa. Before you came, we're being killed because of you. And now after you came, we're being killed because of you. So it goes to show you the way people justify the mistake. And Pharaoh here does the same thing. When good things happen, out of Allah's mercy, Pharaoh says, look, our policy, we're the greatest, we're the best. See why we signed this deal? Because we're the best. See why this good thing happens? Because we're the best. And when bad things happen, well, because Musa's around. He's defying the will of the idols, the will of the gods, the will of the universe, the will of nature. He's claiming all these crazy things, and that's the reason why we're punished. So you see how people can justify their sin and rationalize their position. And the sign that comes, instead of increasing their iman, it becomes a source and a reason for them to actually justify their kufr and to move further and further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. And this is again really sad. And here's the reason why people get punished. The real punishment comes when this statement is made. Doesn't matter what you show us as a sign to bewitch us, we're never going to believe. So when you make this decision, you basically make this decision that it doesn't matter what you see, you're never going to believe, then you yourself have set yourself up for destruction. Because this is arrogance. This is the opposite of humility, opposite of gratitude. Doesn't matter what I see from you, I'm going to interpret it in a way that makes sense to my already preconceived notion. Then that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends more punishments. Instead of deficiency in provision or deficiency in terms of the famine, no. These are going to be more vivid. So these are punishments, but there's still signs. There's still signs. The flood, the locusts. And imagine, subhanAllah, how this is happening in the current years that we're living in. We're seeing the locusts and the economic impact that they've had on certain parts of the world. The lice and the frogs and the blood of the Nile. All of these came as clear manifest signs separated. And of course, when these things happened, they turned to Musa and said, hey, out of desperation, please help us. We can't deal with this. So when the pressure is real, that's when people turn to Allah. That's when people turn to Musa. So they pray to Allah through Musa. Musa, make dua. And if you do make that dua, we will believe in you and we will send the Israelites with you. So Musa makes the dua. The things go away. And then they say, well, it's just a coincidence. So they don't believe. They find a way to justify their defiance. Instead of believing, they continue and reaffirm their disbelief. That's when they were what? When they were punished. That's when the real punishment came. Remember, we talked about this in Surat al Araf, which we just showed the example of. And how did the punishment came? They were killed. They were destroyed by the water that came. And we talked about earlier how the nature of the punishment is similar to the nature of the crime. And then another episode starts here, 137. And that is the episode of being tested with good, being tested by receiving something. So we talked about how we can be tested by punishment and we can be tested by receiving something. So before, all of these tests come as punishment, all of this. The tufan, the jarad, the qummal, the dafadi', the dam, the sinin, wa naqs min al-thamarat. These are all signs in which Allah is testing by taking away. But here Allah is testing by giving, by making people inheritors. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to inherit the eastern regions of the land and the western ones. So much land they inherited, and it's blessed land. And Allah gave them fulfill the covenant because they were patient. And Allah destroyed everything that Fir'aun used to do. Just like that, all gone. And that's a reminder and reassurance for the believer that just like the magicians fell into prostration and believed right away when they saw the signs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also right away caused all the things that Fir'aun built, economic, social injustice, systems of oppression, systems of pervasive injustice, all gone just like that. وَمَا كَانُوا يَعْرُشُونَ, and everything that they built, all their buildings, all their ideas, everything they stood for, gone just like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's first test for Banu Israel is when they come across an idol the other people are worshiping. Right away they say to Musa, make us one like it. And that goes to show you that they weren't necessarily united in belief. They were united against an enemy. So the one thing that kept the Israelites together until this moment is their need for freedom, is their need to move away from Fir'aun. But now that they have that freedom, they're trying to figure themselves out. Who are we? What do we believe in? And unfortunately, one connection that we can make here is look at the Muslim community. The Muslim community all over the world now is united by the Islamophobia and the fact that there are so many enemies towards Muslims and Islam. And that's one thing that unites us. But my fear and your fear, we should always be thinking, once that goes, once Muslims have steady positioning and a system of a voice in the world, on like globally and economically and socially, are we going to make more mistakes than we were making when we were oppressed? Because now when we have freedom, we're going to try to figure out what we are and who we are, and we're going to reconstruct our identity. And sometimes some of us will reconstruct it away from the Quran and away from the Sunnah. And we're going to reconstruct it based on what other people do. So we're going to say, hey, look what these people have. Let's have one like it, just like they're doing here. So they came across idols and they said, hey, make us one like it. And this is the problem of people who are oppressed for too long. They start to want what other people have instead of looking at what they have and being grateful and appreciative. So this is the inferiority complex. This is the impact of colonization. This is the impact of years and years of ideological, engineering, where we're made to feel inferior, where we're described as inferior, as backward. So think about, subhanAllah, the work that, Edward Said, who's not even a Muslim, did about this. Think about the work that someone like, Lama Abul Ghud, where she talks about, the impact on the self-image of the Muslim. Think about someone like Fan, who wrote about the impact of slavery on the perception and the self-image of the Black African American slave. This is very important for us to think about, especially as we re-emerge after the post-colonial era, and we're trying to find a place for ourselves in this, post-modern society and world that we're living in today. How are we going to still fall prey to liberalism and understandings of, other isms and other systems that exist? How are we going to take, some of the good that has been prompted and supported and endorsed, that is already within our Islam? I'm not saying that we don't have that. We have it within ourselves. So how are we going to look at the modern world and take from the modern world that which makes sense to us Islamically, based on our legacy, based on our tradition, based on our past, and accept that and endorse that? And how are we going to filter out and weave out the ideas that are not part of our tradition and are foreign to our tradition, and not foreign to our tradition only, but are actually anti-tradition? They go against the tradition and go against what we believe in and we should be believing in as Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this example here should be very, very important in the back of your mind. Anytime that someone is calling for revival and new interpretations of the deen and adding on to the deen, remember this. Remember this ayah here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows what happened to the Israelites. Tamam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reminds them through the words of Musa, really? You want an idol and turn away from Allah after all that He's done to you? Shame. Shame on you. Remember how Allah saved you from Fir'aun when he was punishing you and killing your children and letting your women go so they can be slaves? And this was a big punishment, a big test. Yet after Allah saves you from that, this is what you do. The second test is when Musa excitedly goes to meet Allah. Allah promised him that when you're taking your people out and you've taken the people out and you freed them, that's when you come back to meet Allah for 30 days. And we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken Musa away from that difficult environment where there's a lot of pressure to be free to meet Allah and to learn directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Musa told his brother, stay and take care of my people with me. But what happened to the people? The people ended up worshipping an idol, making a golden calf and worshiping that golden calf. And this is related to the story of Musa in Surat al because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually orders Musa and orders the community to sacrifice a cow, to get rid of the idea, to get rid of any attachment that they've had. And the way that we make sense of this is the Israelites saw the Egyptian people worshiping great gods. They used to worship big gods, lions and cows. And the Israelites were forced to have their gods as little insects. So for them, it's like, wow, we have the freedom to do what the Egyptians used to do. Well, let's build ourselves a god like that. It's like they've been missing what they've been missing. They couldn't have it. So they wanted to have it even though it was wrong. It's like when someone has been far away from something and has been, socially conditioned. Oh, look at your marriage. It's so weird. It's so disgusting. What? You just sit with someone and you get used to, you talk to them and that's it. You get married. There's no fun. There's no excitement. There's no drama. So you see how, subhanAllah, people can be conditioned socially to want the whole like fun and, journey of dating, even though that is much more destructive than the conventional process of getting to know someone from an Islamic perspective with the right precautions. But they see how, subhanAllah, the society can precondition you to desiring and wanting that which is not even good for you. Just based on, subhanAllah, the images, and we have to be cognitively conscious and aware of how those images are impacting us, how the inferiority complex might be manifesting itself in many different ways. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then shows us the impact of Musa's anger and how the alwah are destroyed and how that takes away from the blessings, and eventually Musa comes back to his sense and he asks Allah to forgive him and to forgive his brother, and eventually he destroys the idol. And when the idol is destroyed, that's when they realize, subhanAllah, that it was nothing. It was really nothing. And this is unfortunately the reality. We don't realize how little what we want to have has how little significance it is until finally we have it, and then we realize it's nothing, it's meaningless. Let me open up the floor here for reflection, because there's a lot, we've covered a lot. It's a lot of review. We're putting everything together again. Does everyone follow? Let me hear from you some reflections and comments that you're taking, reflections on how this is related to us nowadays, because this is very relevant. Who would like to share something, inshallah? Bismillah. Let me hear something. Farhan, yes, تفضل.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
So I was thinking, so it's exactly what's happening right now, right? So back in, let's say if we go as far as like 9/11 that happened, we can look at that as like a major sign that shook the world. And then again, the presidents there or the presidents in other country, they're pretty much lying and deceiving, and they're saying, oh, look, this is what we did, this is what we did. And like Trump is like the biggest example nowadays. He's always like, oh, anything that good happened, okay, he did it. And then anything that bad happened, somebody else did it. So again, the COVID-19 that's happening right now, we should look at that as a sign that's waking up the world, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then the bigger question here is how do we protect ourselves, knowing that let's say this is a sign that's in front of us, and how do we move forward protecting us and protecting our loved ones, and what should we do to not fall into the bigger calamity that's probably coming?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent reflections. Excellent reflections. And what would the answer be to your final question? If you were to answer your own question, what would you say?
Obviously, we do our best to do our salah. It's like the most important thing right now. It's all the massages are closed, so we have time to pray and all. Not in the masjid as much as we love to go and pray there, but anything other than that, let's say anything other than the salat and following the rules and regulation according to Islam, anything more than that, like obviously we do all that. Now that Ramadan is coming, how do we protect ourselves other than the salah? Like, this is what I always wonder.
Sure, it's a good question. And my reflection, not fully an answer, but reflection on that, is it goes back to knowledge and it goes back to learning. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. We need to understand our history. We need to understand where we've come from. We need to understand our constitution, our Islam, our way of life fully in order for us to make sense of our past and to have an active roadmap for the future. It goes back to knowledge. For me, that's the key. Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. The more you learn about your history, about other communities' histories, the more that you'll be able to see the similarities and avoid falling into these mistakes in the future. Amir.
Sheikh, I think the view would be the signs we are getting now is not the same sign that we are trying to focus on. Whoever has not taken precautions will eventually get impacted. Whoever has not taken precautions, they are gonna get very much of signs of there is a creator. Even if they did not believe, they will be asking for a breath. Our concept would be, we are in an overall, I'm not getting the word for the type of punishment, which would be an overall for everyone. People who are already dedicated, like people who are asking these questions, there is an example. If you are asking it, the least are for you to worry about. It should be the worry for the ones who never asked.
Can you repeat that last comment? I'm just struggling to understand that last comment.
It is, if a person is concerned about what will happen, then those are the people who are already doing the effort to be saved. It should be those who never bothered asking the question.
Yeah. You see, it's an important point here. Those who don't know at all, they are the ones who are going to be given more leeway when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. Allah is not going to punish someone who didn't know. And we gave this example before. Imagine if someone is living in a place where they don't know anything about Islam, they don't know anything about the community, they don't know anything about truth, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have the worst possible image of Islam that is shown on TV. They're not going to be held to the same criteria and the same standard as someone who's growing up in a Muslim family, in a Muslim household. So don't think that the one who's thinking about it already is saved because they're thinking about it. Sometimes the one who's thinking about it, because they have more resources around them, they're expected in the sight of Allah to do more. And the one who doesn't know anything at all, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're going to be tested on Yawm al-Qiyamah with a test specifically for them. They're known as Ahl al-Fatra. So it's the job of those who know to do more to teach those who don't know and to break through the barriers. And it's the job of those who don't know to be humble enough to learn and to seek. And somewhere in the middle, there's that gradient in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who knows, and He makes the final decision. Like the theme of the surah here, Surat al Araf, those who are on the edge. They did some good and they didn't do some good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who makes the final decision. And based on the understanding of the ayat, Allah's forgiveness eventually, overwhelms. So I don't want us to think, oh, we're good because we're thinking already and we know, and we're thinking about how we're saving ourselves. Because if we know enough to save ourselves, then it's going to be the question of, well, what are you doing to save others? And I don't want us to point the finger at those who don't know anything about Islam, be like, well, it's your fault, you're the ones that are going to be punished. Because in reality, they have to struggle to learn and go against big waves and big misconstructions and big misconceptions that people are spreading about Islam. So we have to have a little bit more of a balanced approach when it comes to understanding, and when it comes to understanding our positions in relation to other people. Does that make sense, brother Amir?
Yes, Sheikh, it does.
Wajazakumullah khairan. Brother Farhan, your hand is up again.
Yes. So following Brother Samir's question, so the thing that's really scary is obviously the people who don't have the knowledge, they will have a leeway. in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the scary part for us Muslims, knowing that we have the knowledge, that puts us on a greater hook, right?
That is true, yes. Or more of a responsibility, yes.
It's more of a responsibility on us to be better for ourselves and then for the community. Now,
right.
we, again, like, it's a very scary thing. Like, this is why I continuously wonder, like, what is it that we should do for us and people around us, or for the community, Muslims or non-Muslims? Like like to, again, dawah could be one of the things, but I don't know. I always wonder. It's a very scary thing. Let's say even if you have the knowledge, but you still fall, and what happens? Like, are you obviously gonna get punished in the dunya? Hopefully, it would be this smaller one. In the akhirah would be a really scary one.
Yeah, we have to be hopeful, but at the same time carry that responsibility and let that responsibility prompt us to doing the best that we can. So what I would say is we have to communicate to people around us. We have to break through the misconceptions that they have. We have to articulate Islam to them in the best way possible. We have to represent not just intellectually our ideas, but through everything that we say and everything that we do, through the decisions that we make, the dress, everything that we do. We're sending a message in this part of the world to everyone that sees us as Muslims. Everything that we see is understood not just as our action, but as a representation of Islam. So taking on the understanding that we are ambassadors, I think that's where the conversation should start. Miguel, you have something to say?
Jazakallah khair, thanks.
Yes, it's more of like just more of a question to kind of clarify it a bit, because you spoke earlier about like how warnings and signs come and then the punishment comes to the people if they don't pay attention to these things. And obviously in today's world now with like COVID-19 and stuff like that, that was like have mentioned earlier, but what are some examples, if you can like elaborate in like our everyday lives that happens like every day on what some of these like warnings can be?
So what are examples of modern warnings that can come to wake us up? That's your question, right?
Yeah, yes, please.
So imagine it could be something as simple as me walking down the street towards doing a sin, and then something really tragic happens. Imagine I'm on my way to do a sin, and then I get into a really, really serious car accident. And then that keeps happening. Every time I intend to do that sin, something really bad and tragic happens. That could be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala waking me up before it's too late. But then if I keep ignoring that sign, things will just open up. Another example would be, if every time I try to do a sin, the doors shut down in that process. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking me away from that sin. So these are examples, little early warning signs to stay away from that. Does that make sense, Miguel?
Yes, thank you so much. Jazakallah.
Barakallah fikum. Sister Hania.
Oh, my apologies.
1 second, Sarana. Sister Hania, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sister Hania.
I was just wondering, like, in relation to signs.
Can you increase your volume, please?
Sure. Can you hear me now? Okay, I was just wondering, in relation to signs, how can we know when something's like a clear sign from Allah or something that we're just overthinking or overanalyzing?
Look, at the end of the day, if it's bringing you closer to Allah, and if it's making you stay away from what is wrong, it is okay to think about it as a sign. So that the end here is a good justification for your thought. But at the same time, if it's leading you towards being hypersensitive and obsessive and to a point where it's destructive, then it's best not to overthink. So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is it bringing me close to Allah? Khalas, khair. Is it making me hopeless and worried and anxious too much? Then I have to stop that. So that would be the criteria through which I would make that decision. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Jazakumullah khair. Miguel?
Yes.
You have another, you had a hand?
No, I think it's just the same hand from before.
Okay, Sister Rana, go ahead.
Okay, there are 2 questions from the deaf community.
Yes.
Suleiman is you had mentioned in Prophet Lut's time, their community had same-sex marriages, which is prohibited in Islam, but and then also you said that, you know, nowadays people judge Muslims for how they get married, and that dating and going about the culture that they do here is haram. But so our Islam says it's okay for a woman and a man to get to know each other before marriage in order to proceed down that road, but not do the dating and the same-sex marriage.
That's the first question, right?
Yes, that's from Brother Suleiman, and then there's another question from one of our sisters, Sister Maryam.
Okay, so let me take the first question from Brother Suleiman. Brother Suleiman, the process of getting to know someone for marriage is very detailed in Islam, but we can summarize it by saying that it should be public. So meaning if I'm going to propose, I go through the front door, I go ask the father, I show that I'm financially capable, that I'm ready, I'm mature, and then the family allows me to sit down in a public setting, in the house, where I'm not going to be saying things that are exaggerated, things that are not true. I'm going to be sitting with the family, talking, and it's a process of families coming together, not just individual relationships being created, but a familial relationship being created, in which I just don't think about me and my needs, but I'm also thinking about my family, everyone that has raised me, that has supported me throughout the process, and then making a decision that is not just selfish, it's a decision that is not just loaded with emotions, it's a decision that is more rational, that takes into account where I'm from, my familial expectations, and allows me to, again, have my family support in the process. So that's where, again, Islam stands. And of course, once, inshallah, that happens and there's, chemistry and everyone is on the same page, your family's on the same page, her family's on the same page, you get married, you live together, and then you have your freedom and your comfort to enjoy and to do whatever you, inshallah, would like to do, which is, of course, halal. But the idea here is that this is set in motion to protect, to safeguard you and to protect the individual also, to protect the sister and to protect you so that you're doing the best decision for you and for her as well. There was a second question?
Yes. One of the, I believe the sister asked a question. I just wanted clarification on, she said, if a person has more knowledge, sorry, 1 second for the interpreter.
Take your time.
Sorry, the sister asked, how do you recognize that it's a sign from Allah? And then you gave the example of, for example, if you're planning on doing a sin and you get into a car accident, and that's a sign. No, I'm not understanding. Sorry, what do you mean? Okay, so that example that you mentioned is recognizing a sign from Allah. But for a person such as myself, who I don't have a deep knowledge of Islam, I'm still learning, how am I able to know that that's a sign if I don't have that basic knowledge to know that, something is right or wrong, or to know that that could be a sign? If I'm unaware, if I don't know, I don't have that knowledge.
Sister Yasmin, that's her name, right?
Maryam.
Maryam, Sister Maryam. So my sister Maryam, may Allah bless you for your question. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take everything into account, every factor into account. So inshallah, there will be many opportunities for you to learn and to grow. So embrace those opportunities, learn, grow, because now, subhanAllah, you have a translator here, an interpreter who's able to interpret. So join us along this journey and grow. So inshallah, a year from now, your question is not going to be, I don't know much, so am I held accountable on the same level? It's going to be something like, well, now that I know, what can I do next? So inshallah, when you grow, inshallah, in your knowledge, you'll be able to see. And quickly, subhanAllah, the difference, I always like to say this, the difference between you sitting here teaching and you sitting there learning is just a few years of dedication. So maybe one day you can be in a position where you're teaching all the other deaf Muslims of Canada, inshallah, and others, Islam in a beautiful way, and you're empowering them to be better versions of themselves and to be better human beings. So now, alhamdulillah, is a great time to be optimistic and to learn and to grow. And that would be my answer to you.
Inshallah, jazakallah khair.
Wa jazakumullah khairan. Excellent, excellent. Do we have any other questions, inshallah?
Sheikhna, I have sorry, go.
Go ahead, Abdul Malik.
I have questions that are not related to the class, though.
Go ahead, no problem.
Okay.
But one condition, turn your camera on so we can see you.
No, trust me. You don't want to see what's going on here.
Let us see your beautiful smile. Bismillah.
لا Jazakallah. No. Inshallah, next class. والله. Okay, so they're very weird questions, to be honest. They're the questions that I couldn't figure out myself. The first one, a brother was asking about a wird for dhikr, like a dhikr wird to do. They want to prepare for Ramadan and they want to make sure that they're on top of their game, where they're doing words and all that, not just Quranic words, but dhikr words. Do you recommend any words other than the Nawawi one, because that's very famous? I gave him that one, but I don't know.
Yeah, excellent question. Start with adhkar al-sabah and adhkar al-masa, the morning adhkar and the evening adhkar. And then, of course, in addition to that, go to all the du'as that are in the Quran and the Sunnah. Excuse me. Alhamdulillah. It's not the Corona, inshallah. Nowadays, send alarms right away. Alhamdulillah, we're home most of the time, 90% of the time. So alhamdulillah, we're keeping the social distancing. But long story short, the best thing to do at this time is to do your adhkar al-sabah, adhkar al-masa, do your ad'iyah from the Quran and the Sunnah, and then in addition to that, read, for example, some of the great texts that we have, which have, mashallah, great adhkar, like the Sheikh Ala al-Sayyid, he does the halaqa on al-bidayah wa nihaya, and he does explanation from the book, which is Hisn al-Muslim, and from Hisn al-Muslim, you can get a lot of those adhkar you can do on a daily basis. So I would say do your wird 10-15 minutes from Hisn al-Muslim once you've done the adhkar al-sabah and masa.
Nice. And when is Sheikh Ala's halaqa?
It's
every Tuesday and Thursday.
Oh, I thought they were just Q&A sessions. But okay. The second question, Sheikhna, is with regards to pets. The brother is a bit depressed and bored right now. He's on everything, so he's thinking about getting a dog. And I don't know, what we should, as Muslims, are we supposed to have dogs in our house or no? Or
there are many pets that you can have. You can have a pet cat, a pet chicken, a pet rabbit, a pet hamster, a pet horse.
A pet little cousin.
Horse. Dogs, Islamically speaking, it would be spiritually impure to have a dog in your house. So dogs themselves are not bad. It's just spiritually impure to have the saliva of the dog in the house. And for that reason, Muslims shy away from having dogs in the house specifically.
Okay. Okay.
If you insist on having a dog, then you can have a guard dog. If you live in a farm, you can have a farm dog. You can have a hunting dog.
What about
Yeah, you see my guard dogs?
Oh, you have guard dogs?
You see them now?
Yes, I do. Yes.
No, I don't.
Amir Atif. You can look at Amir Atif. He has dogs. He has guard dogs.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention that, mashallah, may Allah bless you all. Wallahi, this is an amazing community, man. Mashallah, may Allah bless you all. Wallahi, amazing. The work that we do here, you guys do. I hardly do anything. I don't do anything. But
may Allah bless
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikhna, and everyone, and Farhan too for the images, daily images, daily adhkar.
I miss you, brother. I miss you too. Okay, I have another question following the sister question that was asked.
Yes, go ahead.
You know how we're always talking about.
So Farhan, let us see you. Let us see you.
No. I'm sitting on my couch, half sitting.
Okay.
So we're always talking about how you can see the signs. Let's say if you're going to commit a sin, like you might have like obstacles in the way. So what about, having the knowledge and then you're still going, you're going to commit a sin and then nothing happens along the way. Everything goes nice and smooth. Everything goes dandy. You go commit a sin, come back, and then what? Like we should also talk about what if you don't have the signs? What if you don't have any obstacles along the way?
Remember we said
how do you see that, and what are the outcomes?
Right.
Can be after that?
Yeah. Remember istidraj? Remember the concept of istidraj? So let me share my screen again. This is a good opportunity to remind us, inshallah, of istidraj. Can you see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
So at the very end of the surah, Surat al Araf itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about istidraj. Let's see, for those of you who were here, does anyone remember where it is? Does anyone remember which ayah it is? Let's see if I can pull it up here. But the general concept is, yeah. It's 182. So let's open up 182 from Surat al Araf. Right here. For people who know the truth, Farhan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might not show them signs directly, or might show them signs, but they're less clear as anyone else would expect, or that anyone else would expect. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here talks about istidraj being a gradual form from where people least expect. And we give this example of a police officer. Imagine a police officer sees someone speeding, but instead of clocking them at 40 hours or 40 kilometers an hour, waits for them. And
letting them go.
And they go to 50 and 60 and 70 and 80 and 90 and 120. So the police officer is giving them a chance to correct their behavior by not intervening. But then because he gives them, or she, the police officer gives them that time, they continue to actually transgress. So don't assume that when Allah is not intervening, it's not because he's not aware, it's because out of his mercy he's giving you time, or because he's already shown enough signs that you don't need any more signs, or he's given you enough knowledge of this reality that you're aware of it. So now, Farhan, that you know that Allah does not have to show you a sign, that Allah can test you with this istidraj, as ayah 182 of Surah al Araf talks about, then it can actually be enough. The knowledge itself is the sign for you. So you've had the sign. So now Allah is going to test you by putting you in those situations to basically, test whether you're going to be committed or not. So knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be that sign. And when you're aware of that reality, then that could be how you're tested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, since we're here in the community, I am doing grocery shopping for the people who are shying away from going out. So if anybody wants to let me know or send me their address and their grocery list, I can go and do it for them.
May Allah bless you and give you Jannat Firdaus. That's really kind of you. I appreciate it. Barakallah feekum. Inshallah, now it is 9:12. We've went 12 minutes past the end time. I do apologize for taking your time. But inshallah, what's going to happen now is we are going to give you 2 weeks, inshallah, to review everything. In those 2 weeks, I'm going to send you the notes, inshallah ta'ala. And then we're going to open up the floor for online, inshallah, tests. So for those of you who want to take a test, to review, to make sure that your knowledge is as strong as possible, I'll inshallah open that for you so you can inshallah ta'ala have access to the test and do your test bidnillah ta'ala. And then we're going to be starting inshallah Surat al An'am 2 weeks from now. Every Saturday, 6 p.m. inshallah we start 2 weeks from now, and we'll be advertising specifically for that. So please look through the notes, and if you're not on the mail list, please send a message to me at husam@isnacanada.com. Send a message to me so I can add you to the mailing list. And if you are from the Deaf Muslims of Canada, send a message to one of your interpreters or one of your contacts, and they'll pass on the information for me. I will send you the link through which you can download the notes and then take, inshallah, your tests so you can prepare, inshallah, and increase your understanding of the material. At this time, before I close, I will just look at the Facebook messages here that we have. May Allah bless Sister Mais for coming and joining. And Barakallah Fikum. And Sister Nilam is asking, can I make extra dua in my mother tongue in sajda in fard? The best thing to do is to do du'as in Arabic in Salat al-Fard. So do du'as in Arabic, but in your Sunnah, there's more leeway. And of course, it's best to do the du'as, inshallah, afterwards in Arabic or in English once you're done the Salah. But in the Salah itself, the opinion, I know Sister Nilam, you're asking, and you or your family follows, most of the community follows the Hanafi madhab. So I'm giving the answer with regards to the Hanafi madhab. The Imam Abu Hanifa, he was very clear about when you're in fard, you should be reading Arabic only. So hopefully that answers. Barakallah fikum. Alhamdulillah, we did get to around ayah 150 of the surah, but the other section we've covered already, alhamdulillah, many times in classes. So hopefully, inshallah, with the notes, everything will come together. And again, one last time, I'm calling out to anyone who wants to volunteer and help us out with the notes. Please do support us, inshallah. One last appeal, and then we'll close. As you know, masajid in this time are struggling. Today, I spoke with our board members, or one of our board members, and he was very sad because they have to make a tough decision now as finances are becoming very tight, and they're going to probably look into letting some people go from ISNA Canada who are on the staff, because the community cannot sustain financially, with the limited donations. We cannot sustain the team that we have. So I'm asking you, and if it wasn't an urgent thing, I wouldn't have, but it is an urgent thing now. So I'm asking, inshallah, if any of you have been touched or impacted in any way positively by the work that ISNA is doing, please help us through this time to continue. It's just a few months until things, inshallah, get back on track. But in the meantime, we are struggling with thousands and thousands of dollars that are not coming in. So inshallah, please be as generous as possible in this time. And inshallah, if you cannot do it yourself, please encourage other people to do it, inshallah. And we're not doing these services so that you can donate. Of course, that's not the reason. But we are appreciating, inshallah, that you can support so that we can continue to do these services and not have to let anyone from our community and our team and our staff and our management and our organization be let off or be let go during this time. Jazakumullah khair for tuning in. May Allah reward you and bless you. As you know, we go live at this time to do the recitation nightly. So inshallah, we're going to go through another live stream. Feel free to join us as we do the live recitation from home, inshallah, with a different mashayikh. Thank you for joining. Barakallah fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Take care, inshallah, everyone.
Sam, the recitation would be the same channel here, or are you going to send out a different link?
A different link, inshallah, on the Facebook.
on the Facebook. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam.